The story then continues with Jinwoo sleeping in late only to be jolted awake by a call from Gina. Hearing his groggy voice, Gina immediately knows he's still in bed and asks if he even realizes what time it is. Glancing at the clock, Jinwoo notices it's already 2 in the afternoon, so Gina quickly reminds him that her parent-teacher meeting is today. Later, Jinwoo arrives at the meeting, looking surprisingly well-dressed. Gina is stunned by how dashing he appears, prompting Jinwoo to wonder if something's wrong, but Gina reassures him it's not that, it's just unexpected. He then explains that he just had to dress appropriately since showing up in sportswear wouldn't be suitable. Gina muses about how much people can change, and as they walk through the school halls, Jinwoo garners attention from the girls around, leaving them whispering in curiosity. Gina, noticing this, teases him about not having a girlfriend yet, offering to introduce him to someone, but he angrily dismisses the idea. Later, Jinwoo meets with Gina's teacher, who is full of praise for her. The teacher describes Gina as an exemplary student and role model, noting her strong performance in mock exams. Confident that Gina can get into medical college, she advises Jinwoo not to pressure her too much, and Jinwoo agrees. But before the meeting concludes, the teacher asks Jinwoo what he would do if Gina awakened and wanted to become a hunter. Jinwoo's response is immediate and firm that he wouldn't allow it. The teacher expected such an answer and mentions she has a favorite ask. The story then transitions to Jinwoo meeting Song-yi, who is surprised to see him. Jinwoo reveals he is Gina's brother, and Song-yi quickly pieces together that the teacher must have sent him to convince her to quit being a hunter. She defiantly refuses, saying she won't quit or return to school. Jinwoo points out that as an E-rank hunter, she won't have many opportunities to earn money. And while she may have made good money as part of his assault team, that was an exception. Song-yi frustratedly tells him to leave if all he plans to do is lecture her. And she even throws his rank back at him, reminding him he's also E-rank. Jinwoo then calmly states that he's not here to lecture or convince her to quit. Instead, he asks her to follow him. Elsewhere, Jinchul greets Dong-soo upon his arrival in Japan, surprising Dong-soo with a personal reception. Dong-soo sarcastically notes that the chief of the Hunter Association himself has come to welcome him, but Jinchul wastes no time and directly asks how long Dong-soo plans to stay. Dong-soo reassures him not to worry as he won't be around for long. Jinchul, however, is skeptical, noting that Dong-soo has returned to the very country he betrayed, ostensibly just to meet 2 specific individuals. Dong-soo smirks, confident that Jinchul knows the truth. His visit isn't just to see them. And he eerily suggests the surveillance team should turn a blind eye to whatever happens to those 2 in a dungeon, revealing his intent to eliminate Jinwoo first and then Leo. And he confidently remarks that Jinchul's abilities won't be enough to stop him, and Jinchul simply responds that he is just doing his duty. Elsewhere, we see some monsters being unloaded from the chopper that Guild Master Choi and the others took from near Jojo Island, and then Choi briefs the chairman of the Hunter Association on the situation. He explains that the monsters have been attempting to cross the sea to reach the mainland but couldn't sustain flight and fell into the water. Choi then warns that if left unchecked, these creatures might one day succeed in crossing over, but Gunny promises to do whatever it takes to prevent that from happening. The scene then cuts to Jinwoo, who meets up with Sang. Sang, surprised by the unexpected call, comments on how rare it is to hear from Jinwoo and notices Song-yi is with him. Jinwoo then apologizes for the sudden request, but Sang assures him it's fine, though he's curious about Jinwoo's interest in observing their training. Sang then points to a nearby gate, explaining that it's a level C gate that just appeared recently. As they talk, an impatient man interrupts, grumbling that they should start the raid already since this isn't a picnic. Jinwoo glances at him curiously, and Sang introduces him as Kim Chul, an A-rank hunter with the role of a tanker. Sang adds that Kim Chul is the leader of the assault team, and it's clear that Kim Chul is annoyed about having E-rank hunters tagging along to watch his raid. Kim Chul's displeasure is obvious, and Sang tries to smooth things over by explaining the team composition to Jinwoo. The raid consists of 1 rank A hunter, 5 rank Bs, and 2 rank Cs, making a total of 10 people, including Jinwoo and Song-yi. Jinwoo isn't thrilled about the large group since his main purpose was to show Song-yi the harsh realities of dungeon raids, but with so many participants it might dilute the experience. Sang's assistant then advises Jinwoo to stay on the sidelines and let the newcomers gain practical experience, and Jinwoo agrees. The team then enters the gate, but Jinwoo immediately senses something off, and he notices the gate behind him behaving strangely as it begins to glow red. He then realizes what's happening and tries to escape, managing to squeeze his head out to warn Sang to contact the assault team. But then the gate pulls him back inside again. Sang then quickly contacts Baek, informing him of the red gate, and Baek immediately sets out to assist. Inside, Jinwoo and the team find themselves in an endless snowfield, stunned to discover that the gate has completely vanished, so panic sets in as they wonder how they'll escape. Kim Chol then steps forward and explains that they're trapped inside a red gate. Song-yi confusedly asks what that means, so Jinwoo calmly explains that unlike normal gates, a red gate is a dungeon where all contact with the outside world is lost upon entry, and to escape they must either defeat the boss or wait for the dungeon to collapse, and adds that the outside world cannot interfere, and the dungeon will be crawling with dangerous magical beasts. Suddenly, arrows rain down on the group. One hunter is killed instantly, but Jinwoo quickly catches the second arrow that is aimed at Song-yi and shields her from harm. The girl is stunned by his reflexes, and the team realizes they are surrounded by ice elves. Jinwoo then notes that their distance had masked their presence, and he sees they targeted the group's weakest members. And he acknowledges that if this had happened 2 months ago, he wouldn't have survived. The ice elves then retreat, leaving Song-yi confused, so Jinwoo explains that ice elves are ruthless predators known as ice slayers among hunters, feared for their brutal efficiency. Kim Chol then takes charge, announcing that no help will be coming in this place and insists they follow his commands if they want to survive. He then claims that he can't manage the entire group, so he proposes splitting into 2 teams, arguing this will improve their chances. He warns that staying in one place risks freezing to death and insists he can protect those who go with him. Most of the group agrees to go with Kim Chol, but he quickly singles out the weaker members, refusing to take them along, and he explains that their presence would slow the team down. He then states that 1 day in this dungeon equals an hour outside, and it could take months to defeat the boss or wait for the dungeon to collapse. And with a cold, dismissive tone, he labels them as dead weight, so he is going to leave them, but he promises to come back for them once the boss is defeated. One girl in the group decides to stick with Jinwoo, and Kim Chol thinks that's a stupid move, but she is sure that Kim Chol didn't notice the arrow earlier and quietly whispers to Jinwoo that she noticed his earlier reflexes, convinced he's much stronger than he seems, and she thinks that he is even a rank or even higher, but Jinwoo doesn't confirm or deny it. Kim Chol then declares he'll take the main road, assuming it's the best route, so Jinwoo offers to lead his team through the forest. After some time, Kim Chol's group notices claw marks on the trees, so he confidently declares that they've entered Ice Bear territory and smugly remarks that the E-rank team will likely be killed. Soon after, they sense ice bears nearby, and the group quickly finds themselves surrounded. One of the massive creatures charges, but Kim Chol blocks the attack with his shield and cleaves the bear in half with his axe. And without hesitation, he moves to engage the other 2 bears, maintaining his confidence. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's group is stopped by the girl, who points out similar claw marks. She warns them that they're in ice bear territory and suggests they turn back to avoid an encounter. Jinwoo disagrees, suggesting instead that they press deeper. He explains that since this is ice bear territory, they'll only need to worry about the bears, which are weaker than the elves that wait outside. The girl thinks it over and realizes Jinwoo is right. No other magic beasts would enter this area because of the bear's dominance. As they move forward, the air grows colder, so Jinwoo pulls coats from his inventory using subspace magic, handing them out to everyone. The group is amazed at his ability, putting on the warm coats with gratitude. But Song-yi is still puzzled, asks Jinwoo who he really is. Jinwoo avoids the question, reminding her that he brought her here so it's his responsibility to protect her, but he requests that she and the others not ask further questions. Just then, a massive ice bear emerges from the shadows, so Jinwoo steps forward and changes his title to Wolf Assassin as he prepares for the fight. Meanwhile, outside the gate, Baek observes the ominous red glow and concludes that this gate is bad news, and he doubts that anyone but high-ranking hunters could survive. He then places his hopes on Kim Chol, believing his rank might give the assault team a chance. But Sag informs him that in addition to the official assault team, others entered the gate, including Jinwoo. Baek then curiously asks Jinwoo's rank, and Sang replies that Jinwoo is officially E-rank, though he suspects he may have reawakened, though Jinwoo has never confirmed it. Baek isn't optimistic about Jinwoo's chances, but then Dongsu arrives with Jinchul. Baek is visibly displeased to see Dongsu, questioning why he's here when he's supposed to be in America. Dongsu ignores the question and instead challenges Baek, asking why an E-rank hunter was allowed into the gate when he isn't even part of their guild. Dongsu makes it clear he's referring to Jinwoo, leaving Baek wondering how Dongsu knows him. Dongsu scoffs at the red gate, lamenting that Jinwoo will likely die inside before he gets the chance to meet him. Jinchul, observing Dongsu's frustration, muses that Jinwoo is fortunate to be inside the gate, sparing him a confrontation with Dongsu. However, Jinchul doubts Jinwoo's chances of making it out alive. Inside the gate, Jinwoo finishes off the last of the ice bears, earning another level up. His team and the girl are left stunned and wondering who he is, but he remains tight-lipped. Later, the group gathers to eat roasted bear meat, and they are astonished that Jinwoo managed to take down so many bears alone. The girl warns that they can't afford to relax just yet, as the lair of the monsters must be nearby. Song-yi, on the other hand, is baffled by Jinwoo's behavior, questioning why Jinwoo has gone out for exercise after dinner, even though he just fought such an intense battle. So she remarks on how strange he is, and the others agree. Elsewhere, we see Jinwoo standing outside the lair of the ice bears, ready to test his shadow army. He summons them, watching as they charge forward. The shadows easily cut down the bears, but some of the creatures fight back fiercely, managing to rip apart parts of his army. However, the shadows regenerate quickly using Jinwoo's mana and return to the fight. Then we see that the mages in his army provide excellent support, and Jinwoo is impressed, thinking they perform better than expected, but he notes that maintaining them uses a lot of mana. Suddenly, the massive boss of the ice bears emerges, and with a single devastating attack, it wipes out Jinwoo's entire shadow army, draining a significant amount of his mana in the process. Left unable to regenerate his soldiers, Jinwoo summons Igris. The Shadow Knight steps forward confidently, so the bear charges at him, but Igris dodges with ease, delivering a precise slash, and in moments, the bear is brought to its knees. It attempts a final desperate attack, but Igris finishes it with a swift beheading. Jinwoo observes, impressed by Igris' power. Reflecting on their earlier duel, he admits that he wouldn't have lost if Igris had used his sword. Even now at his current level, Jinwoo believes Igris might still be stronger, and then he praises Igris for handling the fight so well. Meanwhile, Kim Chol's party faces the elves, and we see that all of his teammates have been killed, leaving him alone struggling to process what the hell just happened. He bitterly reflects on how close he was to becoming an elite member of the White Tiger Guild, only to end up in this dire situation. The sight of the elves and the remaining survivors terrifies him, and he realizes he has no chance of winning, so he runs as fast as he can to escape. Then we see Jinwoo stands victorious over the Death Bears, showcasing his immense power as a necromancer. With a simple command to rise, shadow bears emerge from the corpses, seamlessly joining Jinwoo's ever-growing shadow army. Outside the portal, Sang explains that the strike force has been trapped inside for 3 hours, which translates to about 3 days in the portal's distorted time. Red gates are notoriously dangerous, so Dongsu concludes that Jinwoo must already be dead and begins preparing to leave. However, Dongsu halts his departure, demanding to know why Jinwoo was associating with the White Tiger Guild in the first place. Sang casually explains that Jinwoo is merely an acquaintance who wanted to observe a C-rank mission. Then while Sang feels relieved that this answer should suffice, Dongsu shocks everyone by suddenly choking Sang. Dongsu isn't fooled, he knows Sang has a talent for identifying promising new hunters. At that moment, Baek steps forward, transforming as he tells Dongsu to stop. This only enrages Dongsu further, who dismisses Bak as nothing more than a big fish in a small pond. The two S-rank hunters then release some of their power, sending waves of terror through those nearby. Sang grows increasingly alarmed, fearing that an S-rank battle could devastate the entire area. But despite this, the tension escalates, and the two hunters clash. Inside the portal, Kim Chol feels relieved after escaping the elves, but his relief turns to horror when he stumbles upon the mangled corpses of the Death Bears. The sight terrifies him, and he begins to wonder how the E-ranks he abandoned could possibly be responsible for such devastation. The sheer destruction leaves him trembling, so he suspects that the ice layers might be the true culprits and quickly retreats into the forest. Outside the gate, Dongsu is impressed when Jinchul intervenes, managing to stop the escalating S-rank fight, so Jinchul humbly admits that the only reason his arms remain intact is that the two S-rank hunters restrained themselves at the last moment. Jinchul then reassures Dongsu that Jinwoo is just an E-rank hunter, emphasizing that he reevaluated Jinwoo 2 months ago and found no reason to believe otherwise. Additionally, Jinchul explains that the surveillance team's investigation into your brother's death revealed it was caused by a magic beast. Dongsu dismisses this as a convenient public cover-up, convinced that if Jinwoo isn't the culprit, then the killer must be the wealthy Liu. Jinchul then questions why Dongsu is targeting Jinwoo if he believes he isn't the killer, but Dongsu's reply is cold and blunt. It's an excuse to kill. But before the conversation can continue, Dongsu is called away, muttering that Jinwoo is lucky. Sang watches him leave and reflects on how no one truly grasps the depth of Jinwoo's power the way he does. Confident in Jinwoo's strength, Sang believes he will survive the Red Gate. Inside the gate, Jinwoo's group sits around a fire, trying to stay warm. But their moment of peace is shattered when Kim Chol storms in, furious to see these weaklings alive and thriving. Dressed in weather gear and surrounded by blankets and food, they're clearly in much better shape than his own group. So Kim Chol gets enraged and accuses them of hoarding supplies, claiming his team died because they lacked proper equipment. Blinded by anger, he demands to know who was hiding all the gear and blames Park, suspecting she joined the weaker group because she knew the truth. Kim Chol then issues an ultimatum, counting down from 3 and threatening to eliminate them all if the culprit doesn't confess. and when no one speaks up, he screams Jinwoo's name, assuming him to be responsible and prepares to attack. However, before Kim Chul can act, Jinwoo suddenly appears and utterly overpowers him. The group is stunned by their leader's unexpected return, and Jinwoo admonishes Kim Chul for blaming others for his party's failure. Jinwoo also senses something more sinister nearby and accuses Kim Chul of dragging even greater trouble into their midst. Turning his attention to the surroundings, Jinwoo calls out to the hidden presence, stating that their aura is far too strong to go unnoticed, and he orders them to drop their stealth. In response, the Ice Elves reveal themselves, their leader remarking in disdain that one of the human scum is unexpectedly strong. Jinwoo retorts sharply, shocking everyone as he speaks fluently in the language of the magic beasts. Even Jinwoo is surprised by this ability, quickly deducing that his cheat system must be responsible. The elven leader then begins to explain their presence, revealing that one of his men sensed Jinwoo's immense power when he stopped the arrow, so the elf wanted to challenge Jinwoo to a fight. However, before the leader can finish speaking, Jinwoo swiftly chops off the challenger's head. The leader is amused by this display of brutality, but Jinwoo is uninterested in entertaining him and immediately launches an attack. The leader defends himself skillfully, and Jinwoo quickly realizes that this opponent won't go down easily. The leader, still amused, remarks that Jinwoo isn't human, questions why he's pretending to be. Jinwoo is confused by the comment, but the leader's laugh makes it clear that he knows something Jinwoo doesn't. He explains that elves are driven by a voice in their minds commanding them to kill humans, but strangely, they don't hear it when it comes to Jinwoo. This revelation makes Jinwoo suspicious, wondering if the elves' silence toward him is connected to his system directives. The leader speculates that Jinwoo might not be entirely human and encourages him to sensibly hand over the other humans. But Jinwoo demands to know why the elves are targeting humans at all. As the leader begins to answer, something bizarre occurs. His body glitches and he repeats himself as if stuck in a loop. However, Jinwoo refuses to comply, and the leader warns that defiance would make Jinwoo their enemy and reminds him that they vastly outnumber him. But Jinwoo is undeterred and questions why the leader is so confident. And with that, Jinwoo summons his shadow army, leaving the others to look on in disbelief, wondering how such a thing is even possible. The elven leader then dismisses Jinwoo's forces as a waste of time, but Jinwoo ignores his words and presses for a fight. The leader obliges, and the two sides engage in a brutal battle. The humans with Jinwoo attempt to flee, but elven archers target them. Jinwoo demonstrates his incredible skill, eliminating the archers with ease. But despite his prowess, Jinwoo begins to understand the leader's confidence. The elves are stronger than he anticipated and are dealing significant damage. While Jinwoo's shadow army is technically immortal, regenerating his troops costs magic power. Though Jinwoo possesses a considerable reserve, it isn't infinite, and he realizes it could eventually run out, and even worse, he concludes that the elven leader is undeniably stronger than him. The leader engages Jinwoo directly, and Jinwoo quickly evaluates the situation, realizing that even with Igris fighting beside him, Barca remains an overwhelming opponent. The odds are against him, and his regular soldiers won't suffice, so Jinwoo concludes he needs a stronger force to match the leader's power. The leader then formally introduces himself as Barca, and Jinwoo returns the gesture. The two warriors charge of each other with ferocity, and Barca immediately displays his dominance. However, he's momentarily stunned when Jinwoo teleports his blade to his opposite hand mid-attack. Their exchange continues with narrow misses on both sides, but Jinwoo eventually gets pushed back. Barca expresses delight at the challenge, stating he hasn't enjoyed a fight like this in years. Jinwoo, smiling back, unleashes a massive meteor that crashes down onto Barca, catching him off guard. Meanwhile, Kim Chul regains consciousness, seething with anger. Seething with hatred, he curses Jinwoo again and grips his sword tightly, determined to take him down. Then, as Barca battles Jinwoo's magic soldiers, Kim Chul uses the chaos to make his move. However, Jinwoo, having anticipated this, orders Igris to create a dense smokescreen. Using the cover, Igris swiftly ends Kim Chul's life. Realizing too late that Jinwoo had planned this all along, Kim Chul succumbs to his last thoughts filled with regret. With Kim Chul's defeat, Jinwoo commands him to rise, and a radiant light erupts from his body as he is reborn as a shadow soldier. Barca, still charging at Jinwoo, mocks the notion that hiding will save him. But his confidence is shaken when a towering new shadow soldier emerges to confront him, forcing Barca to retreat momentarily. Jinwoo then names his newest member Iron, and the resurrected Kim Chul lets out a deafening scream. Barca assesses Iron, quickly noting after a few seconds of battle that the soldier lacks agility but possesses immense durability. Nearby, Songyi watches in disbelief, wondering if all hunter battles are this intense. Her companions assure her that this battle is far beyond anything they've seen before. Then, while Iron holds his ground, Barca declares the fight lacks challenge and demands that Jinwoo and Igris join the fray. Jinwoo accepts Barca's challenge with a smirk, and the intense 3-on-1 battle begins. Barca's overwhelming strength is on full display as he fends off Jinwoo, Igris, and Iron simultaneously. However, his frustration grows as Iron's persistent screams echo throughout the fight. So Barca decides Iron must be dealt with first, but Iron proves to be a formidable tank, enduring every blow. Barca's confidence grows as he dodges Igris' strikes, but he's caught off guard when Jinwoo lands a stab. Jinwoo is so impressed because Barca avoids a fatal wound even amidst the chaos. Barca then bristles at being underestimated, but Jinwoo commends him for surviving this long. Then as the fight rages on, Jinwoo takes a moment to turn his attention to the rest of his clan. Barca, suddenly remembering his army, turns to see a horrifying sight. Jinwoo's shadow army has wiped out his entire clan. But despite the grim sight, Barca remains confident, certain that taking out Jinwoo will be enough to turn the tide. As Jinwoo throws his dagger, Barca mocks him, calling him a fool for discarding his weapon. However, he underestimates Jinwoo, who recalls the dagger with pinpoint accuracy. Barca barely blocks it, but his weapon is destroyed in the process. Jinwoo then seizes the moment, ordering Iron to restrain Barca. Immobilized, Barca becomes the target of an immense fire attack unleashed by Jinwoo's magic soldiers. But despite the devastating strike, Barca isn't finished. He cuts through Iron and vows to annihilate the humans, but Jinwoo counters, silencing him once and for all. Jinwoo declares the battle over, but Barca, defiant to the end, insists it's not finished until he says so. His defiance is short-lived as Iron regenerates and crushes him completely. So Jinwoo reiterates that the battle is indeed over, as Barca lies lifeless on the ground. The ground then begins to tremble, but it's actually merely Iron ensuring their victory is absolute. Jinwoo reprimands Iron, reminding him to show restraint, and silently hopes this behavior won't become a recurring issue. The group then breathes a collective sigh of relief, astonished as Jinwoo calmly tells them it's time to leave. They all feel relieved to leave, but before that, Jinwoo takes one final look at Barca's lifeless body. Outside the portal, Sang tells Baek it's time to return home as a week has passed inside and the chances of survival seem slim. But Baek refuses to leave, unwilling to abandon his guild members. Then both men are stunned when the portal begins to open, and Baek confidently assumes it's Kim Chul emerging, certain his guild member managed to succeed. However, both are shocked when the figure stepping out isn't Kim Chul but Jinwoo, alive and unscathed. Sang's confidence proves correct, and Jinwoo stands as the undeniable victor. The gate then closes and Baek is left wondering about Kim Chul's fate, and when he learns that only the low-ranked hunter survived, he is horrified and deeply curious about what transpired inside. Baek then approaches Jinwoo for answers, but Jinwoo, visibly exhausted, tells him to direct his questions to someone in his guild. Baek is taken aback, interpreting this as defiance, and he is stunned by the audacity. As Jinwoo wasn't asking, he was ordering, and worse it could even be taken as a threat. Tensions rise as Baek grows more serious, emphasizing that 6 of his guild members are missing, making it his duty to find out what happened. Jinwoo, unfazed by the intimidation, calmly points out that he was the one who saved the 2 surviving members, which means Baek should be showing him gratitude instead. Baek takes a moment to cool down, realizing Jinwoo is right, and apologizes for his earlier demeanor. Then, with the situation diffused, Jinwoo takes Songyi home. After Jinwoo departs, Baek turns to Park, asking about Jinwoo and why he seems so angry. Park explains that Jinwoo's mood only changed after defeating the boss. Sang suggests that it must be due to exhaustion, noting that Jinwoo is usually a kind person. Then of course Baek gets intrigued and instructs Sang to do whatever it takes to recruit Jinwoo into their guild. Later, Jinwoo drops off Songyi at her home. She thanks him for everything and says she looks forward to seeing him again. Then as he leaves, Jinwoo reflects on the ordeal. Surprisingly, less than a day has passed since they were trapped in the gate. So he feels disappointed, having only earned a single dagger for all his trouble. And he concludes that Barca must have been far too high level to yield better rewards. Looking back, Jinwoo remembers trying to raise Barca as an immortal soldier. Despite being given 3 attempts, he failed to extract him. Jinwoo takes solace in gaining iron from the situation, but can't ignore the fact that it marks the 3rd time he has had to take human lives. The next day, Jinwoo meets Leo, but he's shocked by Leo's flashy and over-the-top attire. As they prepare for their mission, Jinwoo tells Leo that they need to pick someone up first. That someone turns out to be Songyi, much to Leo's surprise. Seeing how informal Jinwoo and Songyi are with each other, Leo grows suspicious. Then when Jinwoo casually asks Songyi if she managed to get any sleep, Leo misinterprets the interaction. Worried about Jinwoo's intentions, Leo reminds him that Songyi is underage. Jinwoo brushes it off, clearly unaware of Leo's misunderstanding, which only fuels Leo's concern. Sometime later, Leo watches in awe as Jinwoo's soldiers brutally annihilate a group of powerful beasts. Leo can't figure out where on Earth they came from, and Jinwoo recalls that Leo hasn't seen them yet. So Jinwoo reveals that they're a part of one of his baddest skills, but Leo has zero clue that this level of monstrous power is even possible. With the battle over, Jinwoo orders his army to begin mining the area for crystals. Leo, feeling dejected by his inability to match their efficiency, pleads with Jinwoo to at least let him collect the magic gems. Jinwoo isn't self-loving though, and one of his soldiers offers to share the work. Elsewhere, we see a man standing amidst the wreckage of a destroyed ship, and a frightened soldier begs for his life, but the man calmly tells him to relax. But the problem is they don't speak the same language, so after switching to broken English, the man explains that he's human and that all he wants is to go home. Back with Jinwoo, he celebrates with Leo after completing the 19 raids that were part of their agreement. And with the raids done, Leo's next step is to pass the written exam at the association to earn his guild master's license. And once he has the license, he'll finally be able to negotiate with his father. But as for Jinwoo, he announces that he plans to travel for a while, so Leo thinks that Jinwoo must be trying to get away from him, but Jinwoo denies it, saying he's just drunk. Leo, however, is used to being pushed away, especially by his older brother, who's 10 years older and has always been cold toward him, so they never did anything brotherly together. But by contrast, Jinwoo has helped Leo so much that Leo wistfully admits he wishes Jinwoo were his brother instead. Moved by Leo's pain, Jinwoo fills 2 cups and says that starting from today he will consider him his little brother. And that cool shit makes Leo stunned but deeply touched. Meanwhile, the mysterious man from the shipwreck has been restrained, and investigators discuss his origins. He claims to be a foreign hunter who was trapped inside a gate 10 years ago and only recently found an exit that led to a gate in America. The investigators are skeptical, worrying that he might be a humanoid magic beast. To verify his identity, they called in an S-rank hunter for questioning, and that damn hunter is Dongsu, and they're waiting on him to do the questioning because the only information they know is that the man's name is Il-Fuan Sung. Later, Jinwoo tells his sister Gina that he'll be traveling for a week. She knows how busy he's been lately and teasingly asks who he'll be going with. Irritated by the question, Jinwoo curtly replies that he'll be going with a friend and leaves it at that. Soon after, he stands at the entrance to the demon castle, reflecting on how much he has grown since he barely survived his fight against Cerberus at level 20. But now with his level 3 times higher, Jinwoo is confident this challenge will go differently. Jinwoo then uses the key from his system to unlock the gate and enters the castle. Reviewing the quest objectives, he sees that his mission involves collecting demon souls. However, Jinwoo is shocked to learn that the system requires him to collect 10,000 souls, an amount he can hardly believe exists in the dungeon. But despite the overwhelming task, Jinwoo stays focused on his real objective, obtaining the ingredients for the elixir of life to save his mother. So no matter how many demons stand in his way, Jinwoo resolves to complete this damn quest. Elsewhere, Leo speaks with his father Han about taking over the guild. Leo is well aware that his older brother is also vying for control, but disagrees with his brother's approach. He argues that bringing in an outsider to run the guild is too risky for the company's future. Han, however, shifts the focus to Jinwoo, criticizing Leo for associating with him. Han recounts how Jinwoo was present at 3 highly controversial incidents: the double dungeon, the raid where Hum's team was wiped out, and the surveillance team Hunter incident involving murdered convicts. But despite the danger, Jinwoo miraculously survived all 3. Han also notes that Jinwoo was instrumental in helping Leo clear 19 raids to earn his guildmaster license, and also played a significant role in the Red Gate incident, leading survivors to safety. So Han accuses Leo of using underhanded tactics by relying on Jinwoo to gain an advantage. While Leo admits his methods were ideal, he insists he knows what's best for the guild. But to Leo's surprise, Han suddenly agrees to let him pursue leadership, but with one condition. Han wants Jinwoo recruited to their guild. Han reveals that the White Tigers Guild has been trying to scout Jinwoo since the Red Gate incident, recognizing his immense potential. So if Leo truly wants to lead, Han challenges him to secure Jinwoo's allegiance first, and Leo accepts the challenge and promises to make it happen. Back in the demon castle, Jinwoo realizes that despite defeating countless demons, he is unable to extract their shadows to add to his army, and he can't figure out why. He has taken down a massive number of them, yet it feels like all that effort might have been wasted. Just then, he receives an entry permit for the next floor, and a glowing light marks the way forward. Jinwoo marvels at the dungeon's immense size because it's essentially an entire city contained within a single building. However, all the walking is quickly becoming tiresome, but luckily Jinwoo summons the bear leader to carry him. The beast charges forward, effortlessly cutting through a sea of demons that block their path. Impressed by its sheer power, Jinwoo decides to name the bear Tank. Elsewhere, a group of girls marvel at Chaha as they admire her. Chaha, however, recalls a conversation she had with Mr. Choi. He decided to keep the reports about the flying ants under wraps, but Chahe felt they should go public. Mr. Choi explained that releasing that information would only cause widespread panic, and instead they should focus on strengthening their guild as they're already the largest domestic guild, and more power is the key to expansion. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo has cleared even more demons. When he first received the key, he feared this might be an S-rank dungeon, but so far the demons he's faced are around high B rank. Their numbers are overwhelming and they grow stronger with each floor, but by only killing the demons required to proceed, Jinwoo has made steady progress. Based on his experience with other structures, Jinwoo guesses that this castle likely has 100 floors, just like the Tower of Trials. So he wonders how strong he'll be by the time he reaches the top. Then as he reaches 4,000 souls collected, he reminds himself to track his supplies carefully. He also recalls his promise to Gina to return within a week, making this a race against time. Eventually, Jinwoo collects 10,000 souls, completing the quest's main requirement. However, his journey isn't over yet. As he progresses, he encounters a group of powerful monsters, and the leader's name appears in red text indicating extreme danger. The monster's name is Vulcan, the boss-class leader of the lower floors. Elsewhere, we see that Sang searches for Jinwoo, only to learn from Gina that her brother is on a trip, but Sang isn't convinced. There are no records of him doing a raid or leaving the country, and the last trace the association has of him is right in the middle of the city, so the association can only speculate about where he's gone. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Jinwoo declares that he'll take on the big boss while instructing his army to wipe out the remaining demons. His soldiers immediately spring into action, swiftly taking down the horde. And with more points allocated to his intellect ability, Jinwoo can summon a larger army and maintain them more efficiently. And also the increase in magical power has made battling much smoother. Jinwoo then turns his attention to the boss-class demon and wonders if the giant beast is ever going to get up. Assuming it's just going to sit there, he's caught off guard when it suddenly moves with blinding speed to attack him. Jinwoo reacts just as fast, dodging the strike and countering with a damn powerful punch that sends the massive demon flying. Even Jinwoo is surprised by his own strength because all he did is punch the damn monster, so he wonders if he accidentally leveled up his power. However, Vulcan isn't finished and it lets out a thunderous roar, so it seems it's about to shift into another form, reminding Jinwoo of his previous battle with Cerberus. The beast then charges at him with alarming speed, so Jinwoo calls out to Iron, who sends him a shield just in time. Jinwoo blocks the attack, but the giant launches a relentless barrage of punches. Jinwoo is stunned by how something so enormous can move so quickly. As the attacks continue, he manages to find an opening and moves behind the beast, only to discover that it can anticipate his movements. Vulcan is an absolute monster, and the only vulnerable-looking spot that Jinwoo can identify is his little head. Jinwoo then begins running, formulating a strategy to limit the beast's mobility. Spotting the perfect building nearby, he sprints toward it. Vulcan, too focused on chasing Jinwoo, crashes straight into the structure. And with the beast momentarily immobilized, Jinwoo summons his weapon, and in one decisive strike, he slices through Vulcan's neck. The Lord of the Lower Floors is defeated, and Jinwoo receives an item called World Tree Fragment as his reward. Elsewhere, we see that Ilfuan is being interrogated by Dongsu, who has heard rumors that Ilfuan might be a talking magic beast. But Ilfuan denies the claim, offering to undergo any tests, including DNA analysis, to prove his humanity. But despite this, Dongsu plays the role of a bad cop and shuts him down, ordering him not to speak unless asked a question. Dongsu is irritated that his fun has been spoiled and takes a look at Ilfuan's paperwork. Ilfuan then asks if he can say something, but Dongsu snaps at him and told to shut up. Ignoring the warning, Ilfuan presses on, asking how much humanity truly understands about gates and magic beasts. Dongsu has no idea what the hell Ilfuan is talking about, so Ilfuan elaborates, explaining that the dungeons, gates, and beasts are merely the tip of the iceberg. He warns that a power capable of triggering an ultimate catastrophe has already awakened. Ilfuan then reveals that he can't say any more, but insists that his only goal is to avert this disaster. Dongsu has had enough of what he considers nonsense and reminds Ilfuan that millions of hunters exist worldwide. He argues that if enough of them combine their strength, they can handle any threat. Ilfuan, however, reveals that sheer numbers won't matter against what's coming. He warns that those hunters will be devoured and turned into weapons against humanity itself. Dongsu, increasingly frustrated, dismisses Ilfuan's claims and turns to the absurdity of his backstory, specifically how a magic beast supposedly managed to have a wife and 2 kids. With mock curiosity, Dongsu asks what Ilfuan's son's name is, so Ilfuan replies that his son's name is Jinwoo. Dongsu's mood shifts to amusement as he smirks, informing Ilfuan that his son is dead. He refuses to answer any of Ilfuan's questions, adding that Ilfuan can ask his son all about it when they meet in the afterlife. Dongsu flexes his power while making this threat, but Ilfwan's expression darkens, his eyes filling with murderous intent. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo's shadow army is ripping through yet another group of demons. Jinwoo acknowledges the leader of the group and remarks that the battle has become entirely one-sided, and he wonders if the demon leader is surprised by how terrifying his shadow soldiers are. But then it becomes clear to Jinwoo that even the undead can experience fear as the demon visibly trembles. And in a blink of an eye, Jinwoo sliced the leader's head clean off. Then a notification pops up revealing that Jinwoo has just defeated Metis, the Guider of Souls, and has leveled up even further. Back outside, we see that part of the city lies in ruins after a massive disaster. An investigator remarks on how battles between S-rank hunters can reshape entire landscapes, obliterating everything in their path. He notes, however, that they're lucky this fight was contained to just this area because it could have been far worse. The destruction was so sudden and overwhelming that it seemed to happen in an instant. Surveying the aftermath, he reflects on how Dongsu was defeated so quickly that the damage barely had time to spread. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo has run out of food, signaling that this is as far as he can go for now. He's reached floor 75, and while there are likely only 25 floors left, it's still quite a journey. The gains, however, have been worth it. From the skeleton he defeated, Jinwoo received a necklace, and from the beast on level 50, he obtained an earring. Both items are powerful on their own, but together they offer a set bonus, adding 5 points to all stats. Noticing one empty slot in the set, Jinwoo deduces that there's one more boss-level beast to defeat. He also earns an item called the Sphere of Avaricious, and while it doesn't benefit Jinwoo directly, it doubles the firepower of his magic soldiers when they wield it, making it a valuable asset. Finally, Jinwoo's latest reward is the chance to open the cursed random loot box. He feared he might never get another opportunity, so he's relieved to find his second key inside. But unfortunately, the key comes with no instructions, leaving him clueless about when or where to use it. For now, these rewards take a backseat to Jinwoo's main objective, gathering the ingredients for the Elixir of Life. He already has the World Tree Fragment from Vulcan, and the spring water from Echo Forest after defeating Metis, but that's 2 out of the 3 ingredients needed to save his dying mother. So Jinwoo vows that the next time he returns to this dungeon, he will finish what he started and complete his mission. Afterward, Jinwoo exits the instance dungeon and reflects on his progress, and he realizes that he now only needs the purified Demon King's blood. Knowing how crucial it is, he concludes that he must be fully prepared before attempting to obtain it. Checking his stats, Jinwoo notices a significant increase in his level after his recent trip. However, he's still classified as an E-rank hunter, so while he can continue leveling up, his E-rank status prevents him from participating in high-level raid missions. So Jinwoo decides it's time to drop the facade and reveal his true strength by having his rank reassessed. The next day, Jinwoo heads to the assessment center for his rank revaluation. Coincidentally, Kitchell, Sang's ever-loyal sidekick, is also at the center, scouting for potential recruits. Kitchell casually observes the hunters, guessing their ranks when he spots Jinwoo among them. Recognizing him instantly, Kitchell quickly calls Bak, informing him that Jinwoo has come to get reassessed. Upon hearing this, Bake drops everything and rushes to the assessment center. Meanwhile, Jinwoo waits for his turn. He overhears a nearby conversation between 2 hunters. One of them reassures the other, who is visibly nervous, telling him that the test is simple. The anxious man explains his predicament, revealing that he needs to earn money as a hunter to support his wife and daughter, who have threatened to leave him. The other guy tries to comfort him, saying that as long as his rank is better than E, he'll be fine. He even points out recruiters who are ready to make offers to anyone ranked above E. Hearing this, Jinwoo reflects on how this has always been the harsh reality for E-rank hunters. Moments later, he is summoned for his test. Inside, the examiner notes that Jinwoo is here for a reassessment and assumes he's familiar with the process, so she instructs him to place his hand on the black crystal and wait. Jinwoo complies, but the examiner immediately notices an issue. An error message appears on the machine. She asks him to try again, but the same error pops up. The examiner repeatedly resets the machine, yet the result remains unchanged. Her superior arrives, noticing her distress, and asks if something is wrong. She explains the situation, believing the machine must be malfunctioning. So the superior decides to conduct the test himself, but when the same error occurs, he realizes it's not a mechanical failure. The superior explains to the examiner that this error isn't due to the machine, but rather its inability to measure Jinwoo's magical power. His energy has surpassed the device's limit, rendering it incapable of providing an evaluation. Stunned, the examiner quickly pieces it together. Jinwoo has become this country's 10th S-rank hunter. Meanwhile, outside the evaluation center, Mr. Choi approaches Jinchul, inquiring about the progress on the winged ants investigation. Jinchul explains that the investigative department has conducted an autopsy and is comparing the current sample with those from previous cases. However, they still require more time to reach a conclusion. Mr. Choi acknowledges this and changes the subject, bringing up the recent Red Gate incident. He mentions that the White Tiger Guild allowed a non-member to participate in the raid and even let him take down the boss. So he curiously asks Jinchul about the man's identity. Jinchul admits he has no idea, revealing that although he was present during the raid, he left before it ended. Mr. Choi is visibly disappointed by this and then notices a commotion inside the center. Deciding to investigate, the two head into the building, where they witness the aftermath of Jinwoo's failed rank reassessment. Everyone is buzzing about the machine's inability to evaluate his power. The examiner informs Jinwoo that he will need to return in 3 days for a re-evaluation using specialized equipment, as a standard machine is insufficient to measure his capabilities. Meanwhile, Kitchell watches from a distance, realizing that Jinwoo is exactly as Sang anticipated. Recognizing the opportunity, he prepares to approach Jinwoo to strike up a conversation. Just then, Mr. Choi and Jinchul enter the building. Jinwoo instantly recognizes Mr. Choi as the renowned Ultimate Hunter, the country's strongest fire mage. Sensing Jinwoo's powerful aura, Mr. Choi quickly deduces that he is the source of the commotion. Eager to recruit him, Mr. Choi steps forward to introduce himself, but Jinwoo casually walks past him without a word. The entire room is stunned by this unexpected snub. Mr. Choi, bewildered, asks Jinchul if he forgot to introduce him properly, but Jinchul reassures him that he did. Despite this, Jinwoo still walked by without so much as a glance. Before anyone can say more, they realize that Jinwoo has vanished, leading them to suspect he must possess assassin-like skills. Moments later, Beck arrives at the center, panting from running there as fast as possible. Seeing him in such a hurry, Mr. Choi instantly pieces everything together. Jinwoo must be the hunter who cleared the Red Gate. This revelation solidifies his belief that Jinwoo is truly extraordinary. Choosing to leave things be for now, Mr. Choi exits the building. Meanwhile, Baek stands in shock, realizing that Mr. Choi has already discovered Jinwoo's involvement, and he laments that this was the last person he wanted finding out about the situation. At night, Jinwoo sits silently beside his mother, gazing at her peaceful figure. Before leaving the room, he whispers to her to wait for him just a little longer. Outside, he encounters Jinchul, who greets him with an unexpected confession. Jinchul admits that Jinwoo has completely changed his perspective. He explains that as part of the surveillance division, his job is to monitor hunters and bring those who break the law to justice. In the past, he had always been confident in his ability to judge people, but Jinwoo has shattered that confidence, proving him wrong. As Jinwoo walks toward the exit, he asks if he's under surveillance as well. Jinchul reassures him, saying they are monitoring him as a criminal. However, he notes that the surveillance team is tasked with controlling hunters, that even they are powerless when it comes to S-rank hunters. Jinwoo nods and continues toward the exit, but Jinchul stops him, saying there's someone who wants to meet him. Moments later, Gunny, the chairman of the Hunter Association, enters the scene. Introducing himself, Gunny invites Jinwoo for a calm and friendly conversation. First, he congratulates Jinwoo on officially becoming an S-rank hunter. Jinwoo looks confused, prompting Gunny to clarify, so he explains that the reassessment was merely a formality. The moment the machine failed to measure Jinwoo's power, his status as an S-rank hunter was essentially confirmed. So Jinwoo curiously asks why the reassessment was necessary if his rank was already decided. Gunny smiles and explains that it provided the association with a grace period, an opportunity to meet Jinwoo before anyone else could. Gunny elaborates, revealing that while the association manages a vast number of hunters, only a few are truly exceptional. Most elite hunters tend to join guilds in pursuit of fame or money. He then points out that even Jinchul, one of their best experts, is only an A rank, leaving the association in dire need of a more powerful figure. Gunny then extends an invitation to Jinwoo, offering him the most prestigious position in the association. He explains that the government no longer holds real power in the country. It's the hunters who now dictate the balance of power. At the center of this dynamic are the 5 major guilds, massive organizations barely maintaining a fragile equilibrium. Gunny warns that if Jinwoo joins any one of these guilds, the delicate balance will be thrown into chaos. Instead, he proposes a solution. Jinwoo should join the association and transform it into the 6th major power, capable of holding the guilds in check. Gunny asks for Jinwoo's thoughts on the matter, and Jinwoo, intrigued by the opportunity, begins to seriously consider the offer. Jinwoo then takes note of Gunny's remarkable presence. As the first S-ranked hunter in the country, Gunny radiates overwhelming power and strength, with a physique that defies his age of over 80 years. Jinwoo realizes that despite stepping back from active duty, Gunny still carries the strength to rival him. He knows his life could take a turn for the better if he accepts the invitation, but Jinwoo still refuses. Gunny assumes Jinwoo, like many others, is choosing money, but Jinwoo surprises him by stating otherwise. Jinwoo explains that he longs for battle, declaring that the dungeon is where he truly belongs. Hearing this, Gunny feels his old heart race, a sensation he hasn't experienced in years, and he muses that if he were 10 years younger, he would have loved the chance to fight alongside someone like Jinwoo. Realizing he can't sway Jinwoo's decision, Gunny decides not to press further. Jinwoo thanks him for the offer and takes his leave. As Jinwoo walks away, Gunny laments that even S-ranked healers can't reverse aging, leaving him stuck with a body past its prime. He then instructs Jinchul to cancel all of his appointments for the rest of the day, wanting time to himself to reflect. Meanwhile, Jinwoo contemplates his next steps. He knows he must grow stronger as quickly as possible to save his mother. His sense of urgency drives him forward, leaving no room for idleness. Across the globe in America, Dong-soo awakens in a hospital bed, his body still battered from his recent encounter. The deputy director visits him, expressing the need to clarify one crucial detail. He asks Dong-soo if Il-Fuan Sung is truly a magical beast. And without hesitation, Dong-soo affirms that the power Il-Fuan displayed was anything but human, concluding that he must be a magic beast. Satisfied with the answer, the deputy director begins to leave, but Dong-soo stops him, asking what actions are being taken against Il-Fuan. The deputy director explains that while the administration is tracking him, there's no guarantee of success. After all, Il-Fuan defeated Dong-soo, one of their strongest. Left alone, Dong-soo recalls the haunting moment after his defeat when Il-Fuan warned him to stay away from his family or face relentless retribution. Even in hell, he will not leave his ass safe. Fueled by rage and humiliation, Dong-soo resolves to prepare himself for a rematch. So he realizes he'll need a powerful artifact to stand a chance. It is explained that artifacts in the Hunter's world are man-made relics of immense power, considered high-level equipment in the Hunter world. Even the most skilled craftsmen struggle to create them. Meanwhile, we see Jinwoo scrolling through artifacts on an online auction site, but nothing catches his eye. Everything worth considering is outrageously expensive, and he knows he needs to be fully prepared before taking on the Demon Castle. He inspects his sphere of avaricious, which can double magical damage. He notes that while some market items can boost magic power by 20 to 30%, there's nothing else that can outright double it. Jinwoo realizes the sphere could fetch a massive price if sold, but its origins would raise two main questions, especially since he's only ranked E. So he thinks that if he had records of completing a rank E raid, selling it might be easier. But as an E rank hunter, even participating in those raids is off limits. Just then, his search leads him to a job listing from the Hunters Guild. They're hiring miners for a large-scale expedition, and to his surprise, there's no rank requirement. Meanwhile, Gunny reviews Jinwoo's file. He notices how drastically different Jinwoo looks compared to 4 months ago, leaving him to question if Jinwoo is a false ranker. However, Jinchul assures him otherwise, revealing that Jinwoo sustained several injuries while clearing low-ranked dungeons. He then explains that Jinwoo became a hunter to fund his sick mother's care and pay his sister's tuition. Gunny, impressed by his devotion to his family, learns that Jinwoo recently joined the Hunters Guild raid mission. Gunny assumes Jinwoo couldn't resist the sign-up bonus, but Jinchul corrects him, explaining that Jinwoo joined as a miner, not part of the assault team. Gunny is puzzled, unable to figure out Jinwoo's motives. Meanwhile, we see Jinwoo arrive at the gate site. He's accepted as a miner due to his strength, which stands out even among combat-type hunters. Jinwoo then explains that large-scale gates, such as rank A, require various teams: the assault team for fighting monsters, a mining team for extracting mana stones, and the recovery team for collecting monster corpses. So with so many people involved, the rewards are substantial. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, we see the guildmaster Mr. Choi battling the monsters solo. He incinerates them with his powerful fire magic, while the tanks shield the team from his flames. The monsters are left charred, and Mr. Choi presses forward, hunting down the rest with ease. A short while later, the assault team exits the dungeon and Jinwoo observes them, assuming they've cleared every monster except for the boss to keep the gate open. So he realizes how strong Mr. Choi must be to lead the team through a rank gate without issues. The miners then gossip about the Hunters Guild's second-in-command as she emerges from the gate, revealing herself to be Cha-ha. Jinwoo then senses her powerful aura, and for a brief moment, she picks up on his. Though the sensation quickly fades, she wonders if it was her imagination. Jinwoo, impressed by her perception, decides to focus on his work. The miners then enter the gate and begin extracting mana stones. And while the others are focused on mining, Jinwoo's interest lies in the ranked boss. He wishes he could see it at least once. Overhearing miners whispering about his E rank, he shrugs off their comments, thinking that this kind of talk is universal. As he gets to work, his impressive strength draws attention, leaving the others questioning if he's truly E rank. After some time, the leader calls for a lunch break, so everyone else exits the dungeon, but Jinwoo stays behind, determined to finish his work before resting. The leader invites him to join them, but he declines, focused on clearing his mining area. As the others leave, Jinwoo's expression sharpens with determination because he sees this as his chance to sneak a look at the boss. Sprinting toward the boss room, he wonders if it's stronger than anything he's ever faced. Though he knows fighting it would be a massive loss for the Hunters Guild, he can't suppress his excitement. Summoning his dagger, he moves closer, ready to enter. But just before stepping in, he's stopped by Chaha. Her piercing voice cuts through the silence as she asks, "What the hell are you doing here?" Jinwoo thinks that this was a damn careless move on his part, and with a resigned sigh, he tells Chaha that he simply got lost and ended up here. She asks him if he is from the mining team and bluntly informs him that this is the boss room, ordering him to step back. Jinwoo silently admits that Chaha truly lives up to her reputation, as he hadn't even heard her coming until she spoke up. Chaha then notices that the dagger she had seen earlier in Jinwoo's hand has vanished, wondering if her eyes were just playing tricks on her. Jinwoo apologizes for wandering off, a trace of regret coloring his tone, and she snaps at him to get out immediately, lest he aggravate the boss. Jinwoo attempts to leave, but as he passes by Chaha, she spots something off and commands him to stop. When he halts, she takes a whiff of him, surprised that he isn't reeking. She asks him if he's really a hunter, and upon confirming he is, and that he's ranked E, she wonders if something's wrong. Yet she brushes it off, cautioning him to be careful on his way out. As he turns to leave, she ponders whether his lack of stench is due to his low rank, and in a quiet moment of introspection, she admits that he actually smells pretty damn nice. Afterwards, we see Jinwoo heading into the dungeon after his break, while his mining buddies are quietly envious that he got to meet Chaha when he got lost. They mention that they can only admire her from a distance and explain that she tirelessly patrols the area to shield them from the boss, even sacrificing her own rest time. Jinwoo realizes with a flicker of admiration mixed with wistfulness that this is why she was around the boss room, and the mining boss tells him that she's a bit uneasy around the scent of other hunters. The miners add that it's due to her unique constitution, which is why she always covers her nose with a handkerchief. Jinwoo then reflects on how her reaction to him was notably different, and he wonders if that means he doesn't carry the typical hunter scent. He recalls that the boss of the Red Gate said something similar, and he figures it must be because he's just a player. With a subtle mix of curiosity and uncertainty, he wonders what being a player actually means, though he has no damn clue. Later, we see him receiving his pay after the mining wraps up, and the miner boss expresses his gratitude as they finished ahead of schedule thanks to him. The miners then remark that he possesses a natural knack for this, and the boss even confesses that in all of his time he's never encountered anyone quite like him. He inquires if Jinwoo would consider working for him on a long-term basis, promising fair compensation, but Jinwoo replies that this is merely a one-off deal for him. The boss frowns at this, but he still requests Jinwoo's assistance for one more day, explaining that tomorrow they have consecutive A and C rank missions. Jinwoo reflects that his reevaluation test is scheduled for the day after tomorrow, and he feels a surge of confidence having finally grasped the raid process today. Still, he's startled to learn that the Hunter Guild has lined up raid missions one after the other, planning to tackle 2 missions tomorrow. The boss informs him that the second assault team will be assigned to these missions, leaving Jinwoo thoroughly amazed. The boss boasts that the true strength of the Hunters Guild lies in having 2 assault teams capable of raiding rank 8 gates, something no other guild in the nation can manage. Energized by this revelation, Jinwoo agrees to return tomorrow as well, and the boss, clearly delighted, promises to speak to his superior about doubling his salary. Jinwoo modestly tells him not to worry, but the boss remains insistent. That night, we see Chahae with a trace of concern instructing someone to look into Jinwoo within the mining team, and she discovers that the person already knows him. He explains that Mr. Choi had tasked him with the same job the other day. However, he is unable to share any details as every piece of information on Jinwoo has been sealed by the blasted Hunter Association. He finds it utterly odd because he's never witnessed the association lock away data on someone who isn't a top-tier hunter, and before he can say more, Chahae abruptly ends the call. Lying in her bed afterward, she contemplates what all this might signify, thinking that although she's met many hunters so far, this is the first time she's encountered one who actually smells pleasant. The next day, we observe Jinwoo arriving at the gate site, and everyone greets him with open arms, a welcome stirring memories of his early hunting days and drawing a gentle smile to his face. They then decide to begin with the C-rank gate for the day, and we see Jinwoo working the mana stones like a damn human excavator. After wrapping up the work, he joins the others for a meal, and the boss keeps praise on him, claiming they managed to finish early and enjoy this lunch break solely because of his effort. The boss even wonders if Jinwoo truly doesn't want to stick with them, offering to pay him 5 times the usual rate, but Jinwoo flatly refuses the deal. Shortly after, Sun Ki-hoon, the captain of the second assault team, shows up, asking if someone from the mining crew can lend a hand since their porter couldn't make it today. The boss suggests that the recovery team would be better at hauling things, but Ki-hoon fires back that they already mentioned being short-staffed. Clearly annoyed, the boss isn't thrilled with the suggestion, and Ki-hoon ups the ante by offering a risk allowance if they accompany his team into the dungeon. Yet the boss shoots him down, insisting that low-rank hunters like them aren't fit to serve as porters in rank dungeons. Certainly no amount of cash would change that. Still, Kuva makes one final pitch to see if anyone's interested, and Jinwoo boldly raises his hand. The boss tries to talk him out of it, but Jinwoo retorts not to worry, confident in his own guts. But despite their protests, warning Ki-hoon that Jinwoo is new and clueless about what he's getting into, Ki-hoon simply asks for his rank. When he learns that Jinwoo is only rank E, he figures there's no harm in taking him along. They then head toward the gate, and Jinwoo can't help but notice that this gate is larger than the one from yesterday. Kuvun comments that while it might be bigger, its magical energy isn't as potent as the previous gates, reassuring him that it's not dangerous. After all, the second team wouldn't be there otherwise. Jinwoo soon spots that the team comprises 6 rank A hunters and 3 rank B hunters, a lineup that still qualifies as an assault team even without an S rank member. As they step into the gate, Jinwoo muses that the magic here is likely weaker than before, yet he can't shake an ominous vibe reminiscent of the Red Gate. The team's healer tells him not to get worked up, assuring him that all the hunters here are incredibly capable and nothing will go wrong as long as he sticks with them. Meanwhile, Kuhn is convinced that once this raid mission is over, he'll be officially promoted to captain of the team. He believes he can handle it, even if he's not as formidable as their current captain or vice captain. Just then, they sense the presence of monsters ahead and immediately spring into action without waiting for further orders. They are then attacked by some dungeon jackals, but these critters are too weak and the team wipes them out in a matter of seconds. They're all surprised to see dungeon jackals here, and Jinwoo wonders if they're a rare sight. So the healer explains that they are merely C-rank monsters, and it's strange to encounter them in a rank dungeon, since weak monsters like these are usually devoured by stronger ones. Jinwoo then notices collars around their necks, revealing that these jackals were being raised as hunting dogs by someone. Just then, more monsters approach, and they realize it's an army of high orcs. One of them attacks by throwing a spear, and Kuhn barely manages to block the strike. They charge at him, and the tank uses his taunt skill, but it proves ineffective as the monsters target those in the back. Although one of the hunters manages to repel them, the orcs take no damage due to their high magic resistance. The party's mage then binds one of the monsters that she can't hold it back because it's too strong, so the fire mage summons 2 fire soldiers to assist her. While the fire soldiers engage the orcs, the rest of the team fights fiercely. The orcs then manage to injure the team's martial artist, prompting them to ask the healer for help, though she's already busy healing the tank. Kuvan thinks they're seriously outnumbered and fears this might be their end when the orcs even cut off one of the hunter's arms. Kuhun silently hopes that no one will die here, and the healer steps in to regenerate the lost arm entirely, while the bespectacled mage holds the orcs back. Then an orc suddenly appears behind the healer, and she seems to accept her impending doom, until Jinwoo intervenes. Using his ruler's hand, he kills the orc by ripping out its spine. The healer is left wondering what just happened, while Jinwoo employs his stealth skill to aid the other hunters, attacking the orcs to weaken them without being noticed. The hunters are taken aback as the orcs start to falter all of a sudden, but they seize the opportunity, launching a full-scale offensive and slaying the orcs one after the other. Jinwoo thinks that he doesn't really want to stand out as an outsider here, that he refuses to let anyone die on his watch. Quietly, he continues to weaken the monsters from the shadows, and the other hunters manage to take care of the rest, eventually wiping out all damn the orcs. Kivum then checks in with everyone, relieved to hear that they're all okay. The healer mentions that something odd occurred during the fight, and Kihum adds that he, too, felt the monsters weaken dramatically all of a sudden. He questions the mages if they were behind it, but they reply that they weren't, and that such a feat shouldn't be possible without an assassin-type hunter. They decide not to dwell on it, reasoning that luck was on their side since they won in the end. Meanwhile, the bespectacled mage thinks that their porter seriously underestimated the team. He should have known that his stealth skill would be detected with a magic caster in the mix. Choosing to keep quiet about it, she figures he must have his reasons, and she owes him at least that much for helping them survive. The hunters then turn to their captain, asking whether they should press on or fall back. They point out that tackling a dungeon like this would at least require 2 more healers and 3 more mages. With a strong suggestion to retreat, the leader takes a moment to ponder the situation. Jinwoo, understanding their reluctance to charge ahead in a dangerous dungeon, silently hopes that the captain will make the right call. In the end, the leader decides to withdraw, much to everyone's relief. When they reach the gate leading outside, they notice that it's sealed by a barrier, a feature that wasn't there when they first entered the dungeon. The mages then step forward to remove the barrier, glad they chose to retreat as this dungeon clearly houses an entity capable of such advanced magic. Almost immediately, everyone senses a surge of powerful magic, sparking the question of whether this was the boss. As the mages hurry to dismantle the barrier, Jinwoo wonders aloud why such a massive magical fluctuation wasn't detected while they were outside. After all, even a B-rank hunter should have picked it up. Just then, the mages suddenly start bleeding profusely, and everyone realizes that someone had cursed the barrier as a sneaky trap. The captain urgently orders one of the hunters to cast some divine magic, but when no one pays attention, he turns around to see what's happening, only to find an entire army of orcs looming behind them. They count roughly 50 orcs, and the leaders from both sides step forward, meeting halfway. The orc leader tries to communicate, but his words are unintelligible until the orc shaman takes over his body and speaks in clear human language. The shaman introduces himself as Kargalgan and tells Ki-hoon that he has been eagerly awaiting the humans. Kuvum then asks if Kargalgan was the one who sealed off the entrance, and the shaman confirms it. Curious, Ki-hoon asks if there's any being stronger than him in this dungeon, but Kargalgan replies there isn't and challenges them to choose, come face him or perish at the hands of his soldiers. Without a second thought, Ki-hoon opts to meet the shaman head-on, and the orcs promptly lead the way. But before that, Ki-hoon confides in Jinwoo that their plan is to launch an attack on the boss as soon as they reach its chamber. This distraction should briefly disable the barrier. He instructs Jinwoo he use that opening to escape and alert the other assault team. Jinwoo can't help but wonder if they're all just signing up for a death wish. But Ki-hoon bluntly reminds him that their mission is to shut the gate, not necessarily to return alive, and the healer hands Jinwoo a short will, asking him to deliver it to her family if anything goes south. Though Jinwoo accepts it with heavy heart, he hopes it never comes to that. She urges him to ensure his own escape while they complete the mission. Jinwoo reflects that this dire situation feels reminiscent of the double dungeon, but these people are completely different from what he's faced before. At the same time, outside the gate, Chaha is frantically searching for Jinwoo, wondering if he might have bailed on the team. When the mining boss notices her distress, she inquires about Jinwoo and learns that he has entered the gate as a porter. Back inside, Jinwoo and the rest of the group finally arrive at a throne room, where they are greeted by Kargalgan and a massive, terrifying horde of orcs. At the same time outside the gate, we see Chaha wondering why Jinwoo entered as a porter, given that he only has one life to live. She recalls having seen him yesterday standing in front of a boss room with a weapon in hand, which now makes him seem rather suspicious. She then informs the miner leader that she'll venture inside to investigate, asking if they have any proper weapons available. The leader only produces a pickaxe and hands it to her. When she inquires if there's anything else, he admits he has nothing resembling a weapon, just a few more mining tools. Chahe opts to go in empty-handed, but he questions whether she can manage without any damn weapon, so she reluctantly takes the pickaxe along. At the same time, the hunters inside the gate are stunned by the sheer number of high-level orcs, convinced that if so many of them emerge, they could easily raise entire cities. They notice that the 4 generals of the orc army are even mightier than the rest of the horde, and the boss orders the orcs to be silent. The orcs immediately cease their thumping, and Kyun deduces that their mission must be to close the gate, which means they have to defeat the dungeon boss. Then in a dramatic turn, the boss removes his mask, and they are all taken aback by his overwhelming magical aura. They're practically crapping their pants at how insignificant they feel compared to him, and Ki-hoon boldly asks why he has gathered them here. The boss coldly informs them that they are nothing more than entertainment for him, promising to kill them off one by one as the perfect spectacle to amuse his soldiers. Ki-hoon and his comrades are hit with despair upon hearing this, unable to believe that their resolve is treated as mere amusement. He laments that they're nothing but disposable toys to be discarded. Meanwhile, noticing Jinwoo among them, the boss spots that something strange has snuck in with the humans. Unbothered, Ki-hoon charges at the boss to attack, ordering the rest to join in, but finds that everyone is frozen with fear. Undeterred, he assaults the boss on his own, only for the boss to counter with a magical shield. The boss then unleashes his gravitational magic, slamming Ki-hoon onto the floor and even forcefully against the ceiling like a ragdoll, repeating the vicious maneuver several times. His teammates watch in horror as Ki-hoon is battered, but before it's too late, Jinwoo intervenes to save him and gently lays him on the ground. Although Jinwoo thinks he shouldn't meddle because this is a mission for the Hunters Guild, he cannot sit back while the entire assault team is in peril. One of the orcs then lunges at him, but he swiftly halts its advance and obliterates it with his signature ruler's hand. He then turns to Ki-hoon and coolly asks if he could take charge of handling all the magical beasts in the area, to which Ki-hoon with no other option happily agrees. the boss watching all this shit, deeming his enemies display nothing more than arrogant outbursts of raw magic. While Jinwoo admits that it was the first time he had encountered such overwhelming power, even if their roles naturally pit them against one another. And with grim determination, he summoned his shadow army, vowing to end the boss's reign once and for all. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, where the surveillance team headed by Jinchul has gathered at the gate, the miners murmur in confusion about the team's presence, and Jinchul himself wonders aloud why Jinwoo has been working as a miner here for the past 2 days. When the miner leader questions the situation, Jinchul presses for Jinwoo's whereabouts. At that moment, a disgruntled miner who had long complained about Jinwoo's inexplicable actions stepped forward and declared that he had sensed something off about the man from the start. Ignoring the miner's shit grumbling, Jinchul asked the leader to pinpoint Jinwoo's location and soon learned that he had slipped inside the gate in the guise of a porter. Puzzled, Jinchul reflects on how Jinwoo first appeared as a miner and then shifted roles, remarking that now that Jinwoo has achieved S-rank status, every move he makes is under close surveillance. So Jinchul laments that he wishes Jinwoo would at least be more conscious of his actions. The miner leader, still bewildered, asks what is truly going on, and Jinchul tells him to wait until tomorrow's news for clarity. As he moves closer to the gate, the miner leader reveals that Chae had posed a similar question and went inside the gate not long ago. But before Jinchul could probe further, he suddenly detected an unusual aura emanating from the dungeon gate, so he immediately ordered his team to perform another magical power test on the dungeon. And at the same time inside the gate, Chae is astonished by the sheer number of high-ranking orcs that have been slain. Unable to comprehend how Ki-hoon's party managed to decimate so many foes, she resolves to hurry toward the boss room, especially after detecting that terrifying surge of magical energy. The scene then shifts to the boss deriding Jinwoo for confronting his forces with such a pitiful number, prompting Jinwoo to amplify the strength of his shadow army using his newly learned skill Monarch's Domain. He explains that this is the latest ability he acquired, and it makes his shadow soldiers have grown significantly more potent, and he gained it after the battle at the demon's castle. Meanwhile, the other hunters are utterly confused by the turn of events as the High Orcs launch an attack on Jinwoo's troops. Yet his generals prove so formidable that they slice through the orcs as if performing routine pest control. Jinwoo is busy helping to whittle down the enemy ranks, and the hunters note that his movements mirror those of Chae. They remain baffled as to why someone with his power would initially come in as a mere porter. As the battle rages on, Jinwoo becomes acutely aware that the strength of his infantry is only on par with that of a B-rank hunter. His soldiers are falling at an alarming rate, 4 to 5 casualties for every orc slain. Realizing that unless he cuts down the orc horde swiftly, his own mana reserves will be drained, Jinwoo braces for more. But at that moment, the boss unleashes a searing fire spell aimed directly at his shadow soldiers, jeering that Jinwoo should not get too full of himself. Undeterred, Jinwoo retorts that his soldiers possess the uncanny ability to resurrect without end. Not satisfied with that, the boss then escalates his assault further by launching his gravity magic at Jinwoo and his soldiers, and he boasts that he will keep annihilating his forces until his magical reserves run dry. But despite repeatedly wiping out Jinwoo's army, Jinwoo continuously resummons his troops without pause. And amid this freaking relentless cycle, Jinwoo wonders if the boss is deliberately keeping his distance with his long-range magical assaults, while the boss muses over how long Jinwoo can possibly sustain this damn futile resistance. Outside the gate, the results of a magical power test come in, revealing that this dungeon is perilously close to an S-rank gate. Jinchul immediately instructs the miners to contact the leader of the Hunters Guild without delay, and the surveillance department mobilizes to support the assault team. Inside the dungeon, the boss scoffs at Jinwoo, asserting that both the might and sheer numbers of his own army far exceed those of Jinwoo's. As Jinwoo watches in dismay, he realizes that his magical energy is depleting rapidly. In a swift move, he drinks a mana potion to replenish his strength and announces that he's about to reveal his true potential as a freaking necromancer. With a determined gesture, he raises all the fallen high orcs from the dead, turning them into his undead minions, and boldly declares to the boss that he intends to add the boss himself and his generals to his growing legion. Taken aback, the boss questions whether Jinwoo might be some sort of lord, puzzled as to why such a being would even be present in this place. He reflects that ever since he first opened his eyes here, the only command resonating in his mind has been to kill any damn humans. Dismissing any deeper reasons, he decides to follow that directive without question, and thus he sends his generals into battle. The scene then shifts to the Hunters Guild, where Mr. Choi is astonished to discover that the gate's power is nearly at S-rank level. He reasons that the evaluation must be accurate, otherwise Ki-hoon and his team would have already emerged from the dungeon. Realizing that a dungeon break at this level could trigger an incident reminiscent of the Jeju Island disaster, he is relieved that there is still time to avert catastrophe. Mr. Choi then instructs his assistant to mobilize every hunter in the guild, prompting a message to be sent to all A rank and above hunters. He even mentions that they might have to call on the White Tiger Guild and the Fiend Guild for additional support. Although the assistant is surprised by this suggestion, Mr. Choi insists that for now, all they can do is to prevent things from spiraling further out of control. Back to the boss room, the battle intensifies as Jinwoo's general duels the orc commander while his own forces overwhelm the enemy. But to his dismay, the boss watches his own generals struggle and fall, prompting additional hunters to rush to Jinwoo's aid. However, the boss refuses to let them interfere and quickly injures several of them with his curse's magic. Rising from his damned high and mighty stance, the boss sneers that he will make Jinwoo regret ever challenging him. He casts a barrage of curses meant to inflict blindness, lethargy, and slumber on Jinwoo, but thanks to his exceptional health and longevity skills, the curses have no effect. Jinwoo then coolly explains that he's immune to such toxins and promptly summons his mages. In response, the boss erects a formidable magical shield to block the assault, but the mages counter by launching a fireball enhanced by the Sphere of Avaricious. The blazing orb tears through the boss's barrier, striking in hard and fueling his anger. Just then, Cheike bursts onto the scene, her eyes wide with shock as she surveys the chaotic melee. She notes that several hunters are down and Kyun, for instance, is injured, but being hastily healed by the medic. When she asks what hell is going on, the fighters can only offer confused glances. The boss then ramps up his assault, channeling strengthening magic and other spells to transform himself into a giant intent on crushing Jinwoo underfoot. Jinwoo, however, nimbly dodges the massive blows, remarking disdainfully that he's never cared for giants, likely due to a previous debacle in the double dungeon. In retaliation, the boss unleashes a torrent of fire spells around him, indiscriminately wiping out friend and foe alike. Enraged, the boss taunts Jinwoo, questioning whether he still believes he can stand up against such might. In a bold move, Jinwoo lunges forward and stabs the boss in the eye, declaring that by turning into a giant, the boss has only made himself a bigger, more vulnerable target. And he adds coolly that a lone mage without any guards stands no chance against an assassin-type hunter. The boss fires back with more searing fire spells, but Jinwoo deftly evades every blast and counterattacks with his dagger, only to find that his blade barely makes a dent. Realizing brute force alone won't cut it, Jinwoo summons his ruler's hand, using it to snatch up a set of chains. With a swift, decisive motion, he binds the boss and hurls him around the room, leaving the monstrous adversary reeling at his feet. Just then, Jinchul arrives at the scene and, taking in the astonishing display, tells Chaha that he had come to lend support when he noticed an outpouring of potent magic from outside, but now he feels his help might no longer be necessary. Noticing that even the head of surveillance seems to acknowledge Jinwoo's power, Chaha wonders just how formidable he must be. She asks Jinchul what he thinks of Jinwoo, to which he replies with a shrug, admitting that he doesn't really know him all that well. Meanwhile, Jinwoo tells the injured boss that his fate was sealed the moment his own guards fell in battle. Refusing to accept defeat, the boss snarled, but Jinwoo wasn't finished yet, and he called upon the spirits of his former guards to finish the job. And after exchanging some decisive blows, the boss fell, and with great fear in his eyes, he looked up and saw his former generals ending his life. After emerging victorious, Jinwoo felt a surge of power and ascended a few levels, then proceeded to extract the boss's soul, a move that shocked everyone. After rising up, Jinwoo jokingly comments that he finally becomes now much more docile after he turns into a shadow. Then while performing the extraction, he realized he could name the soul. Since the boss's true name had escaped his memory, he decided to dub him Fang. Upon inspecting Fang's essence, Jinwoo discovered that the fallen foe held the Elite Knight rank, a classification he'd never encountered before, though he recognized it as something truly remarkable. He also notes that the High Orcs proved to be a significant gain, just as Jinchul steps forward. Up until this point, Jinwoo had been so engrossed in the soul extraction that he hadn't noticed Jinchul's arrival. When other hunters begin clamoring for an explanation of what just transpired, Jinchul's team intercedes on his behalf, declaring that Jinwoo is currently the association's top secret. They instruct everyone to keep the day's events confidential, explaining that Jinwoo unleashed the power of an S-rank hunter solely to protect them. With that, Jinchul and his team escort Jinwoo out, but before parting, Hoon and his comrades express their heartfelt gratitude, and Jinwoo returns the healer's will to her. Then as Jinwoo was departing, Cheike tried to catch up with him to speak, but the bespectacled mage interrupted and asked why she was lugging around with a pickaxe. But Chaha shyly wonders if he would think she is weird, so the mage asks who she is talking about, and Chaha shyly replies no one. Later, Mr. Choi receives a report of the incident and is utterly astounded by the multitude of abilities Jinwoo has displayed. He asks Ki-hoon to compare the strength of Jinwoo with his own, noting that while typical raids rely on the coordinated efforts of many hunters, Jinwoo defies that norm by working alone. Ki-hoon then challenges Mr. Choi, asking whether he truly believes that he can conquer the most difficult dungeon on his own. Mr. Choi, with a wry smile, remarks that he doubts it, and then says that his title of Ultimate Hunter might now be little more than a joke. And as Mr. Choi leaves, Ki-hoon tells him that he must recruit Jinwoo at all costs, and Mr. Choi announces that he will do his best. Meanwhile, Jinwoo meets up with Leo, inquiring about how matters with the guild master have unfolded. Leo fills him in on the details, and the scene then shifts to the Hunter Association. There, a famous actor named Lee Min-sung has just awakened as a hunter, and the media has swarmed the area to cover the breaking news. Min-sung, reveling in the attention, believes himself to be the star of the day, basking in his newfound fame. The scene then shifts to Baek and Mr. Choi arriving at the Hunter Association, with the media buzzing that they're there to recruit Lee Min-sung. Baek, clearly annoyed, asks who the hell that even is, and Mr. Choi curtly replies that he's not here for that nonsense. Although Mr. Choi has heard of Lee Min-sung, he explains that the guy has already inked a deal with the Fiend Guild, and he's here for something entirely different. Disappointed by the lack of a juicy headline, the media soon scrambles off. Baek then recalls hearing that Mr. Choi had been troubled by the recent A-rank dungeon, which nearly reached S-rank status. Mr. Choi dismisses it as nothing compared to what the White Tiger Guild suffered at the Red Gate, where real casualties occurred. Baek mentions he even heard that Mr. Choi was almost about to beg him for help, but Mr. Choi insists that things turned out differently thanks to Jinwoo, so much so that he now plans to give Jinwoo a grand welcome into his guild. Baek agrees that Jinwoo saved them too, and the two start bickering over who will be the one to recruit him. Just then, the guild master of the Fiend Guild steps in and asks if they're squabbling over Lee Min-sung. They quickly shoot back that they couldn't give a damn about that damn guy, and at that moment, Jinwoo arrives at the association, utterly baffled by all the commotion. Meanwhile, over at Jinna's school, the girls are glued to the news about Lee Min-sung from the Hunter Association. They chat about how Min-sung, an actor with a seriously tainted reputation, is involved in a slew of scandals, with rumors that he sleeps around with every actress he works with. Back at the association, Min-sung himself addresses the media. With surprising determination, he announces that he's decided to become a hunter. He declares that he'll be joining the Fiend Guild under the leadership of its master, Loon Ta-gyu, prompting the media to ask if that means he's retiring from show business. Everyone is shocked that he made such a drastic decision without even knowing his official assessment results. But with a confident smirk, Min-sung asserts that he already knows he's a rank-a hunter and that his contract with the Fiend Guild will last for 2 years, after which he'll return to the industry, and by then his scandals will be nothing more than distant memories. He pretends that he's ready to risk his life fighting magic beasts, no matter what his rank might be. Just then, as Jinwoo tries to sneak into the association, Min-sung's guards block him, telling him he can't enter until the conference is over. Just then, Gunny bursts in and announces that Jinwoo is already his guest, recalling that he had specifically requested they not hold a press conference at this hour. Min-sung bristles at this intrusion, but Gunny doesn't give a damn and promptly takes Jinwoo inside. The media, now even more curious, starts wondering who this mysterious Jinwoo is. Meanwhile, Min-sung tries to force his way into the association for an appraisal, but Jinchul intercepts him, warning that he can't get in right now because others are being reassessed. Min-sung seethingly asks Jinchul if he even knows who he is, threatening that a single word from him could cost him his job. Yet Jinchul, clearly clueless about his shit identity, orders him to stay outside or else. We then see Gunny escorting Jinwoo to the reassessment venue, where Jinwoo notices that Mr. Choi and Baek are present to review his results. Entering the assessment room before they begin re-evaluating his power, the assessors ask him what abilities he uses. Jinwoo casually demonstrates by summoning one soldier, though Gunny knows full well that's just the tip of the iceberg, as Jinchul has filled him in on his true capabilities. Deciding it's time to show his real strength, Jinwoo summons his entire army, declaring that he can bring forth about 100 more soldiers on command. Gunny is visibly stunned by this display, and both Mr. Choi and Baek can practically feel the sheer intensity of his magic. So powerful that it makes them wonder if his abilities even surpass their own. Before long, the appraisal process concludes and Jinwoo is issued an S-rank hunter license. He thinks to himself that with this new status, no one will ever suspect him if he sells the Sphere of Avaricious, using the money to get properly equipped. With renewed determination, he decides that his next target will be the Demon Castle, and Gunny eagerly looks forward to seeing what he can accomplish. We then see Jinwoo leaving the association with Mr. Choi and Baek waiting eagerly to talk to him about recruiting him. but he simply walks right past them, insisting he has other pressing matters to attend to. Just as he opens the door to the association, he's ambushed by flashing cameras, the media snapping pictures of him. Sangye, astonished to see his face on the news, shows the photos to Jinna, who is equally shocked to discover that her brother has become an S-rank hunter. All of Jinwoo's associates catch wind of the news. Some can't believe their eyes, while others had long suspected it was only a matter of time. Back at the association, the media have shifted their focus away from Minsum and are now bombarding Jinwoo with questions. Meanwhile, Leo confides in his father that he was unable to convince Jinwoo to join his guild. He recalls that Jinwoo flatly rejected his offer, insisting that he has a personal mission to complete on his own. Jinwoo explained that joining any organization at this point would only slow down his progress. He must grow stronger independently, and then he asked Leo to come with him instead. Back to the present, Leo pleaded with his father to let him follow Jinwoo. In response, his father scolds him for what he sees as an extremely selfish decision. He reminds Leo that he had originally entrusted this project to his own brother, only to change plans at Leo's insistence. And now Leo seems intent on abandoning everything without achieving a single milestone. He challenges Leo, asking if he believes that is fair, prompting Leo to recall his experiences with Jinwoo and resolve with determination that he must go with Jinwoo no matter what. At the same time, staff at the association are busy keeping the press at bay, preventing them from crowding around Jinwoo. Baek offers to escort Jinwoo home, arguing that dealing with the media would be too draining, but Jinwoo insists there's no need. With remarkable speed, he slips past the reporters while covering his face. Mr. Choi is stunned by how physically strong Jinwoo has become despite his magical background, and Bak can hardly follow his movements with his own eyes. So he wonders if Jinwoo has grown even more powerful since they last saw him, and Jinwoo himself thinks that all that remains is for him to acquire the right equipment. Later, we see Jinwoo at an auction house, where he tells a staff member that he's in the market for an item designed to defend against fire-based attacks. When the attendant inquires about its intended use, Jinwoo explains that he needs something to withstand the intense heat inside a dungeon. He displays a cloak and some rings, noting that while they're reasonably priced, the cost is still a bit steep for him. He wonders if a discount might be possible, but the staff informs him that prices are fixed. However, they add that if he manages to break the glass encasing their equipment, he might just walk away with it for free. Jinwoo is startled by the staff member's comment and readies himself to smash the glass. Just as he's about to throw a punch, the staff interjects, explaining that he was only joking, and that even a slight vibration would trigger an alarm due to the glass's remarkable strength. He apologizes for taking the joke too far, leaving Jinwoo feeling awkward. Frustrated, Jinwoo tells the staff that he'd rather see some proper weapons instead. The weapons specialist then leads him over to display a selection of short swords. As they walk, the armor specialist member points out that Jinwoo somehow managed to crack the glass, even though he never actually touched it. Meanwhile, a particularly hefty short sword is presented to Jinwoo, and he can hardly believe the outrageous price tag, especially since its strength barely matches that of Kasaka's Venom Fang at best. In response, Jinwoo pulls out the Kasaka dagger he recently purchased from his personal store and asks the staff how much it could fetch on the market. They confidently tell him it could sell for about 100 million gold, a figure that shocks him given that he originally paid only 2.8 million. This revelation convinces Jinwoo that items bought at the store are highly valuable, and he begins to think that he might not need to part with the sphere of avaricious after all. Taking a break, Jinwoo retreats to the bathroom, and the scene shifts to the headquarters of the White Tiger Guild. There, Baek reflects on Jinwoo's immense strength, pondering how his second awakening might have ended long ago, yet he continues to grow stronger. Bak wonders if he has been approaching things the wrong way, and he starts to consider that perhaps Jinwoo is a hunter who can keep getting stronger indefinitely. The narrative then cuts to Jinwoo's home, where Jinna notices that the media has finally stopped bothering their house, an event that delights her because it means she can return to school in peace. Jinwoo speculates that the association must have intervened to ensure their privacy. Teasingly, Jinna suggests that he could be on TV if he wanted to, but she begs him not to drag her into it. Jinwoo shrugs, admitting it's beyond his control, and then announces that he'll be away for a week starting tomorrow, a revelation that leaves Jinna surprised and curious about his plans. At that moment, Leo shows up at the doorstep. When Jinna asks if he's one of Jinwoo's friends, Leo clarifies that he's actually Jinwoo's right-hand man. Jinwoo quickly offers an explanation, telling Jinna that he'll be working with Leo for the next week. Although Leo seems a bit confused at first, a gentle nudge from Jinwoo helps him understand, and he readily agrees to play along. At night, we find Leo fast asleep in Jinwoo's room while Jinwoo quietly checks on Jinna, thinking that maybe things have finally settled down. Though now everyone knows he's an S-rank hunter, so he's got to be extra cautious. To ensure security, he summons Fang's guards from earlier, but quickly notes that only 3 are here, recalling that Fang originally had 4. One of the guards reminds him that the 4th had been sent crashing into the ceiling by one of Jinwoo's earlier attacks, and his shadow extraction didn't manage to recover him. Jinwoo shrugs it off, deciding that 3 guards suffice. He then leaves one of them along with 2 ordinary guards to watch over Jinna. Then while on the rooftop, Jinwoo reflects on the need to bolster neighborhood security and orders some of his soldiers to patrol the area, ensuring it remains peaceful. Overhead, we then see a majestic flying magic beast soar through the sky. The following day, Jinwoo and Leo are seen driving together. Leo thanks Jinwoo for letting him stay over, and Jinwoo reassures him that there's no need to worry about him running away from his house. Leo then inquires about Jinwoo's business at Daesung Tower. Jinwoo reveals that he's scheduled to train for an entire week there, much to Leo's surprise. After all, he's already an S-rank hunter. Jinwoo simply replies that he still believes in the pursuit of greater strength, a sentiment that doesn't surprise Leo all that much. Later, inside the imposing Demon Tower, Jinwoo, adorned in his water-based ring and wind robe, embarks on his latest conquest. He receives a quest to slay the demon monarch Baron residing on the top floor, with a reward promising a rune stone for the Shadow Exchange ability plus 30 ability points. Fired up by the challenge and the rewards on offer, he teleports to the 76th floor. In another scene, Leo's mother is seen in conversation with his father, astonished that their son has left home. While his father appears nonchalant, he suddenly collapses. Back at the Demon Castle, Jinwoo is locked in combat with a formidable boss-level monster. In the heat of battle, he summons Fong and hands it the Sphere of Avaricious. Fong retaliates by unleashing a powerful fire spell that reduces the monster to ashes. Impressed by the display, Jinwoo resolves to carefully consider when best to deploy Fong's abilities in the future. Later, we see Leo's father awake in the hospital, learning that Leo has come to visit him. His wife confesses that she lied about his collapse being due to overwork to Leo, and they recall the doctor's grim explanation. He has contracted the so-called eternal slumber disease, a condition where one is overwhelmed by sleepiness until they eventually falls into an unending slumber. Leo's father kept wondering why he had contracted this awful disease, and the doctor explained that people with low resistance to magic are especially prone to it if they're exposed for too long. The doctor even asked if any of his friends or relatives were hunters, which made both him and his wife think about their own son Leo, but the doctor admitted that the exact cause was still unconfirmed. Frustrated, Leo's father then began to wonder if perhaps he had been completely eliminated by this harsh world. Meanwhile, at the country's border, a squad of hunters was patrolling the area when they encountered that flying magic beast we saw earlier. They stopped in their tracks, all scratching their heads and wondering what the hell is that. Back in the Demon Castle, Jinwoo is leveled up after his recent battles. He explains that he's reorganized his soldiers into 6 separate teams, each operating on its own with 2 simple orders. First, to eliminate every visible enemy, and second, to alert him as soon as they find the permit. He admits that this strategy means he won't be able to grab any loot aside from the permit, but it's a more efficient plan overall. However, his progress has slowed considerably since he hit the 80th floor. As he ponders what might be causing the delay, he suddenly notices a drastic drop in his MP. It turns out that someone has been continuously wiping out his soldiers, specifically targeting his Team A. Jinwoo is shocked that an enemy here could defeat a team of his high-level orcs, so he calls his team back and heads out personally to investigate. Arriving on the scene, he finds that Team B has also taken a hit, and he figures that the enemy must be seriously formidable. But something doesn't add up. He points out that Fang's team was much closer to Team A, yet the enemy chose to target the more distant Team B. It dawns on him that this adversary must have known that Fang was too powerful to tackle, and so deliberately chose weaker opponents instead. Jinwoo then deduces that the next target will likely be the Ice Bear squad, and sure enough, he soon spots some demon knights swarming the Ice Bears. The demon knights tear through the bears as if they were nothing more than playthings, and Jinwoo watches in stealth mode. Satisfied with their performance, he deactivates his stealth. One of the knights lunges at him, but he swiftly dispatches the attacker. Then, as 2 more assailants join the fray, he tears them apart with ease, leaving only their leader standing. He charges toward her, but she seems afraid and retreats. At that moment, Jinwoo reflects on his long-held curiosity about whether magic beasts feel fear, and he finally confirms with a malicious smile that they can do. Then the battle escalates as he clashes with the leader, nearly ending her life until unexpectedly she surrenders before he can deliver the finishing blow. As her voice echoes through the fray, he realizes that she is a woman. Removing her helmet, he takes in her features. She pleads for mercy, and Jinwoo is taken aback that the very person who initiated the conflict now begs to be spared. He retorts that he has already dispatched all of her companions, yet she insists that it is the solemn duty of the knights to protect their lord at all costs. She is convinced that as long as she remains safe, her people will thrive, a sentiment Jinwoo dismisses as selfish. Unmoved by her pleas, he turns to leave, but as he glances back, she lunges at him again. But before her attack can land, Fang intervenes to shield him. Confused, he demands to know what she intends to do, and she once more begs for her life, promising to do anything he requests. He orders her to fetch the entry permit, and she reveals that it is currently held by her family. If he spares her, she will retrieve it for him. Moreover, she boasts that she even knows the locations of every permit on the upper floors, and if he guarantees her family's safety, she will guide him to them. Jinwoo realizes that he failed to locate the permits because her family deliberately hid them, and he glares at her with murderous intent, questioning whether he can truly trust her. Sensing his fury, she pleads earnestly that he can, and he reluctantly agrees on the condition that he obtains the permit. She gratefully thanks him, and he then demands to know exactly who they really are. The scene abruptly shifts to a desolate island, where a sinister flying ant has infiltrated the area, leaving devastation in its wake as it slaughters everyone it encounters. Back at the demon castle, the girl introduces herself as Isol, the eldest daughter of the Radiru family. Jinwoo, however, remarks that this is not the answer he was seeking. He had hoped to learn more about the system from her, much like he did with Baruka, the leader of the Ice Elves, and he presses her by asking if she is tormented by voices commanding her to kill humans. Isol denies this, admitting instead that she hears a different directive, one to protect the space. Intrigued, Jinwoo asks when that command first began. She confesses that it all began the moment she arrived here, and when Jinwoo presses her about where she was before, she replies that she was in the demon realm, and that everyone only ended up here once they regained their senses. Intrigued, he wonders aloud what they were doing in the demon realm. Suddenly, something odd happens. She starts acting robotic, her voice flat as she explains that they were preparing for war. When he asks who they were gearing up to fight, she reveals that it was against a formidable enemy, so powerful that the demons had to band together to stand a chance, and they were on the verge of fighting that formidable enemy. But just as she begins to elaborate further, an error message suddenly issues from her mouth, announcing that the details are classified and that the conversation is now blocked. Before he can press for more, she faints and Jinwoo quickly catches her, realizing that he can no longer ask for any additional information. The scene then shifts to a meeting at the Hunter Association. Officials review photos from the recent flying ant attack on the Japanese outlying islands, and Jinchul reports that the assault caused a total of 294 casualties, with 108 hunters engaged in battle. Among the fallen were 4 E-rank hunters, 1 C-rank, and 1 B-rank hunter. Gunny is astounded that a single monster could inflict so much damage, and Jinchul adds that the creature was eventually put down by an A-rank hunter who arrived on the scene. Gunny deduces that the winged ants must possess A-rank strength, a fact confirmed by Jinchul, who cites findings from the investigation department after dissecting the monster. Gunny then points out that the island attack lies just 120 kilometers from Jeju Island, warning that if those ants develop even stronger flight capabilities, they could easily reach the southern tip of their nation. He immediately calls for assistance from Japan and urges that neighboring countries be alerted. He laments that the inevitable threat is upon them now. He wanted to strike first to prevent casualties, but it appears he was too late. Determined, he declares that the 4th raid mission of Jeju Island is now underway. Back in the demon castle, Isol apologizes to Jinwoo for suddenly fainting. He gently asks if she's alright, and she assures him that she's fine, even wondering if he had been worried. He admits that he was indeed concerned and inquires if her home's nearby. Isol gestures toward a house straight ahead, and they proceed inside. Once there, her father is taken aback by the unexpected visitor and wonders if she hadn't noticed the countless troops silently looming in his shadow. Jinwoo notes with appreciation that her father is quite perceptive, but soon enough Isol's father's forces close in around him, declaring that they won't let him leave alive. Isol intervenes, pleading with her father to stand down, while Jinwoo calmly reminds her father that he promised Isol not to harm anyone as long as he receives the permit. Having heard that Jinwoo had defeated both Vulcan and Metis, her father is convinced that Jinwoo isn't an opponent they can defeat. Reluctantly, he hands over the permit, ordering Jinwoo to leave. Then, with unexpected boldness, Jinwoo asks if he might borrow her daughter as well. Startled, her father demands an explanation, so Jinwoo explains that Isol had earlier mentioned she knew the locations of the permits on every floor. Her father then asks whether Jinwoo can guarantee his daughter's safety, to which he promises he can. Satisfied, her father permits the arrangement, prompting Jinwoo to ask Isol to guide him. Elsewhere, we see scientists are busy dissecting the flying ant, examining every detail with intense scrutiny. Back at the castle, Jinwoo continues his steady ascent through the floors, and soon he finds himself on the 89th floor. There he observes that both Igris and Tank have leveled up, one now holding the title of Elite Knight, while the other is just a knight. He muses that one of them now rivals the strength of an S-ranked adventurer, while the other is comparable to a rank adventurer. Meanwhile, Isol has prepared an array of gifts for the nobles on the floors above, intending to negotiate permits through these offerings, but Jinwoo dismisses the need for such bribes. Isol then warns him that the floors above level 90 are managed by high-ranking nobles, on a completely different level from the low-level shits he's been fighting, so obtaining permits by mere conversation will be extremely difficult. Jinwoo agrees, remarking bluntly that no one bothers to talk to someone they consider weak. He recalls that her family is locked in fierce competition with other demon nobles and promises that he will elevate her family to become the most powerful in this realm. Isol then asks him why he spared her family, and Jinwoo replies bluntly that it's because he likes her, leaving her blushing and embarrassed. Jinwoo muses that he really does get along with simple-minded folks like her and Jinho, so he tells Isol to head back home now. He reminds her that she just warned him things would get tough from here on out, and he doesn't want to drag her into danger. But before she leaves, he asks her to disclose the locations of the permits. Nervously, she wonders if she's useless to him. But he reassures her that isn't the case. In fact, he believes it wouldn't be safe for her to go ahead with him. Still determined to follow him and witness his achievements, she insists on coming along, so he agrees, and together they ascend to the 90th floor. There, Jinwoo battles the monsters advancing ahead, and he realizes that Isol was right. Both the strength and the sheer number of monsters in this area far exceed those on the lower levels. Nonetheless, he manages to push forward with little difficulty until he finally reaches the 97th floor. The scene then shifts to the Hunter Guild, where we learn that both Mr. Choi and Cha-ha have received a call for the 4th raid on Jeju Island. Mr. Choi reveals that all the S-rank hunters in the country have been mobilized, and Cha-ha wonders if this means Jinwoo will be involved as well. He then informs her that they will be cooperating with Japan this time, since the flying ants have also been threatening that region. Sheke asks when the raid will commence, but no exact time has been decided yet, though he believes it will start soon because the hunters from Japan's ultra-large guild are scheduled to arrive in their nation later today to discuss the situation. Meanwhile, we see Jinwoo on the 100th floor of the demon castle, where he spots a wyvern circling overhead. The creature lands, and riding it is none other than the demon lord Baron. Jinwoo is struck by the overwhelming aura emanating from Baron and wonders if he has any chance of defeating him. Isol freezes in fear at the sight of the demon monarch, and Jinwoo realizes he must bring Baron down from his ride first because fighting an opponent in the air would be far too challenging. Baron then soars upward, summoning demons to attack Jinwoo. Isol panics, unsure of what to do, and Jinwoo quickly summons his army, now enhanced by his monarch's domain. Together, they engage the summoned demons, wiping them out with ease, which leaves Isol in awe of Jinwoo's power. Still, she remains uncertain whether he can ultimately prevail against Baron, as he is merely an invader, and she wonders whose side she should ultimately choose. Baron then unleashes a torrent of lightning that cascades from the sky in a devastating area of effect attack, decimating Jinwoo's soldiers and sapping a large portion of his mana. Isol nearly gets caught in the storm, but Jinwoo quickly shields her. He realizes that this isn't ordinary lightning. It's a wide-range assault with a stunning effect. Though he knows his soldiers can be revived, repeated hits like this will rapidly sap his MP. Determined to act before his resources are completely depleted, he activates his dash and stealth skills to charge at Baron and target his wyvern. However, Baron effortlessly blocks his attack, and Jinwoo is taken aback that his stealth detection was penetrated. Baron then hurls Jinwoo forcefully to the ground and attacks with a homing lightning breath. Jinwoo dodges the attack, but is intercepted by Fang, who saves him at the last second. Just then, Aegis steps in and slices off the wyvern's head, bringing Baron crashing to the ground. Jinwoo breathes a sigh of relief, glad that the demon lord has been forced to the ground because he was growing weary of constantly looking skyward. The scene then shifts to the Hunter Association, where a meeting is underway with Goto Ryuji, the guild master of the Draw Sword Guild, accompanied by his interpreter, Hanakawa. Gunny explains that the Draw Sword Guild is one of the largest in Japan, boasting 11th ranked hunters and standing as the second largest guild in Asia. He comments that Gono exudes an inspiring aura and truly lives up to his legendary reputation. Hanakawa then thanks the association for accepting their proposal to form a joint assault team. Gunny, not wanting any fuss, tells her not to mention it further. After all, they were the ones who first requested support. Hanakawa then explains that their research based on information gathered and the dissection of the winged ants has revealed 2 critical points for the mission. First, the flying ants grow rapidly after hatching but have a lifespan of only 1 year, meaning that if the queen is killed, the rest will perish within a year. The second key finding concerns the ants' behavior. Based on records from 3 previous raid missions, the researchers discovered that the ants are strongly attracted to potent magic power. Hanekawar remarks that this trait will be crucial in devising a strategy for the upcoming mission, and Gunny agrees, noting that they've analyzed the ants' movements with remarkable thoroughness. Hanekawan then translates for Goto, explaining that their guild plans to send 10 out of their 11 S-rank hunters, all tasked with luring out the ants, while the Korean hunters are slated to eliminate the queen ant. Jinchul then expresses some reservations, pointing out that this strategy might force the Japanese hunters to face thousands of ants head-on. Goto, however, is unfazed, since his hunters will merely act as bait rather than engage in full combat, and their AI simulation confirms that this is the optimum plan, and Gunny agrees to the plan. Back in the demon castle, Jinwoo's army continues its fierce battle against the demons, and Jinwoo himself fights relentlessly. He barely finds time to gulp down a mana potion before he notices his MP rapidly depleting. We then see Igris, Iron, and Fang locked in combat with Baron, who seems to effortlessly block all incoming attacks, including Jinwoo's own strike. And in a brutal moment, Baron seizes Jinwoo by the head, poised to finish him off. Yet Igris intervenes, intercepting Baron's sword, and Jinwoo takes advantage, slashing one of Baron's hands while Igris stabs the other, and Jinwoo's shadow army holds the demon down. In retaliation, Baron unleashes another lightning breath that wipes out a large portion of Jinwoo's forces, leaving him alarmed as his MP reaches critical lows. Undeterred, Baron summons his blades and engages Jinwoo in a rapid exchange of blows. The high-speed duel sees Baron gradually overpowering Jinwoo, and he even manages to disarm him. As Baron attempts to deliver a finishing lightning breath, Jinwoo holds down his arms. Just then, Baron lunges again with his lightning breath, but in a sudden twist, Ezel throws her blade to divert his focus. Seizing the opportunity, Jinwoo channels the power of his ruler's hand, and with a display of raw strength, he rips off Baron's arms. Not willing to give up, Baron tries once more to release a lightning breath, but Jinwoo counters with a devastating uppercut that blasts the demon's head from his body, defeating him once and for all. Jinwoo then collects Baron's soul, thus completing his soul collection quest, and he instructs Ezel to inform her father that the Radiru family is destined to rise to the top of the ranks of this tower from now on. Then we see that Jinwoo has now secured the purified blood of the demon monarch, and with it, he possesses every ingredient needed to brew the elusive elixir of life. He carefully reviews the elixir's success rate, and its quality and quantity depend on the intelligence level of its user, and after a brief moment of hesitation, he begins its formation. When the crafting is complete, he discovers that he's produced 6 bottles of the elixir, each of which must be consumed entirely to unlock its full benefits. Pondering whether this miraculous potion might be the cure for his mother's afflictions, he is interrupted by Iron, who brings him the corpse of a dragon. Impressed, Jinwoo compliments Iron and extracts the dragon's shadow, and having forgotten its original name, he christens it Kaizel. Ezel comments optimistically that riding Kaizel will enable them to return to her homeland in no time, even suggesting that they celebrate with a party upon their return. But Jinwoo, eager to test the elixir of life immediately, cuts her off. He recalls that one of his rewards included a rune stone, and after rummaging through his spoils, he finds it and crushes it, a decisive act that grants him a new ability called Shadow Exchange. This power allows him to swap positions with one of his shadow soldiers, though it comes with the limitation that he cannot use it again for 3 hours after each activation. Delighted with his new power, Jinwoo tells Ezel to head home on her own. She hesitates, wondering if he isn't coming to the party, but Jinwoo explains he doesn't have time to detour to the 80th floor right now. Instead, he uses Shadow Exchange to swap positions with a shadow soldier near his house. Noticing that the ability is now on cooldown, he summons Kaizel and rides it the rest of the way home. Elsewhere, Jinchul and Gunhee review their strategic plans. Gunhee outlines that they intend to use the hunter's combined magic power as bait to lure out the flying ants. Following that, they will deploy special interference waves designed to disrupt the ants' sensory communication. Seizing this window of opportunity, the special forces are set to infiltrate the nest and eliminate the queen. Jinchul remarks that the crucial challenge now is whether the interference waves will work as planned, and although Gunhee shares some of his unease, he remains confident that the investigation's findings are solid and align with their conclusions. He reassures everyone that they also have a contingency plan in case the waves fail, so for now, they should focus on thoroughly preparing a team of hunters to head to the island. Shifting the topic, Gunhee asks Jinchul if he's managed to contact Hunter Jinwoo yet, but Jinchul admits that his attempts have yielded no response so far. The scene then shifts to Baek enjoying a drink with Byung-gu. Byung-gu then cracks a lousy joke that barely elicits a chuckle from Baek. Baek then explains that Byung-gu is an S-rank healer who retired at a young age, a rarity among hunters who usually suffer permanent injuries. Despite his retirement, Byung-gu remains one of Bak's best friends and an eccentric character at heart. Byung-gu then inquires if Bak is truly headed to that island again, and Bak confirms that he is. Byung-gu reminds him of the tragic fate of Eun-suk, and Bak says that is why he is going, because if those ants are allowed to run rampant, they will eventually turn the entire country into their nest. Byung-gu is surprised to hear Bak speak with such patriotic fervor. Undeterred, Bak insists he's going regardless. Byung-gu teases him, remarking that he sounds just like Eun-suk did. He adds that he'll never return to that hellish place and pleads with Bak to leave if he is here to invite him to go back to that damn place. Bak, however, is only there to say goodbye because he might not survive this mission. Byung-gu understands the gravity of the situation, and then he reveals that he's planning to take the civil services exam instead, determined to leave the bloodshed of the battlefield behind. He admits that the exam will be tough as he's only ever excelled at history thanks to watching countless historical dramas. He declares his intention to lead a normal life away from the chaos of battle, which Bak approves of, noting that it's the hunters who are anything but normal. Bak muses that some hunters even enjoyed fighting magic beasts and wonders if that very condition might be the spark needed for awakening. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo sitting quietly by his mother's bedside, where he notices a lingering burn mark on her neck, a scar that haunts him with memories of a childhood accident when he accidentally spilled boiling water on her, though she had barely reacted back then. Overcome with remorse, he retrieves the elixir of life, uncertain whether its legendary powers will work but choosing to trust a system that has never failed him before. With trembling hands, he carefully lifts his mother, and after a moment's hesitation, he forces the elixir down her throat. Once she finishes the potion, he gently lays her back down. Slowly, the elixir begins its work, mending the burn on her neck and rejuvenating her frail body. With bated breath, Jinwoo watches over her, hoping that she will awaken soon, for this moment represents the culmination of all of his relentless efforts. Meanwhile, Jina, unable to focus on her studies, leaves her room to take a reflective walk. Later that night, as the soft glow of the moon bathes the hospital room, Jinwoo is startled to see his mother stir. With a warm smile, she asks if he is indeed her son, and he confirms. Curiously, she inquires how long she had been asleep, and with a heavy heart, Jinwoo reveals that she had been in an unbroken slumber for 4 long years. Concerned, she asks about Jina, and he reassures her that his sister is fine. Grateful for his care, she thanks him for keeping his promise and notices the wounds that mar his body, a testament to the hardships he has borne. Overwhelmed by emotion, Jinwoo breaks down in tears, insisting that he is all right despite the scars of his journey. The next day, a doctor informs the head physician that one of the patients suffering from the so-called eternal sleep disease has finally awakened, and her body shows no signs of abnormality. With their family eagerly requesting her discharge, Jana is later seen in the hospital room, sobbing uncontrollably as she embraces her newly awakened mother and apologizes for all the worry she has caused. Watching this poignant reunion, Jinwoo feels a deep sense of fulfillment, convinced that all his arduous efforts have finally borne fruit. Elsewhere, Gunny is hosting a press conference. He thanks everyone for coming and addresses the nationwide disasters caused by the winged ants from Jeju Island. He announces that in response, the Hunter Association will launch the 4th raid on Jeju Island, a massive operation that will deploy 10 S-rank hunters from Japan in addition to their domestic S-rank team. Meanwhile, hunters of rank A and below will focus on maritime surveillance and homeland defense to support the assault. He declares that they are determined to succeed this time, while Byung-gu watches the proceedings with quiet intensity. Recalling an earlier time before the 3rd raid on Jeju Island, we flash back to when Bak, Eun-suk, and Byung-gu had gathered. Back then, Bak had been passed out drunk, while Eun-suk and Byung-gu were visibly terrified. Eun-suk, recognizing that those who lack fighting ability would be even more paralyzed by fear, resolved to put an end to it. After all, it was up to them to overcome their terror. He stressed that they needed to keep a close eye on Bak during the raid, since his impulsiveness could jeopardize the mission, and reminded his companions that only the 2 of them were capable of managing him. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo and his family returning to their apartment. Their mother is shocked to see the place in disarray. Jinwoo asks his sister what she has done in his absence, but their mother dismisses his concerns and suggests that they all clean together. As they begin tidying up, Jinwoo reflects that this simple act of domestic life is what he had been working for all along, yet his heart is heavy with unease. He wonders if in his role as a hunter, he has crossed a line he should never have, a thought that lingers in his mind. Their mother then casually asks if their father has been in touch during the past 4 years. The siblings exchange silence before she shifts the subject, revealing that she recently heard the news that Jinwoo has become a hunter. She reminisces that their father was once a firefighter, someone she married because he looked so heroic while saving lives, and proudly states that Jinwoo has inherited his trait. Jina adds that she aspires to become a doctor to save people, and their mother insists that she too has inherited their father's noble qualities. At that moment, Jinwoo's phone rings. The scene then shifts to the Hunter Association, where Gunny has just wrapped up his press conference. He remarks that he didn't expect anyone to approach them so soon afterward, and it turns out they're talking about Thomas Andra, the renowned American S-rank authority hunter. Jinchul confesses that he had half expected Thomas to show up, given the timing of recent events, but Gunny is skeptical. He muses that someone with power equivalent to a nation's military would rarely meddle in another country's affairs. Jinchul agrees, wondering why Thomas would interfere here, while Gunny speculates that he might simply be passing by, or perhaps he's here to intimidate them about Hunter Dongsu or to verify something. Gunny also wonders if Jinwoo is still out of reach, but Jinchul reassures him that they've already been in contact with him and that he should be arriving soon. Shortly thereafter, Jinwoo appears at the association and learns that the raid on Jeju Island is set to depart in 4 days. Gunny inquires whether Jinwoo plans to lend his strength to the mission, and Jinwoo admits that it might be a good chance for him to level up since Jeju Island is practically an EXP farm, although he feels he has already achieved his major goals and sees little reason to keep fighting indefinitely. Just as he's about to voice his reservations, he suddenly senses an immense surge of magical energy. Gunny is astonished that he can detect it from so far away and reveals that some of the S-rank hunters are currently warming up in the gymnasium, inviting Jinwoo to take a look if he wishes. Meanwhile, in the training hall, Baek is seen sparring with an opponent who manages to swiftly take him down, advising him to focus on building up his lower body. Refusing to give up, Baek fights on, though Jinwoo is surprised to witness that Baek is struggling under the pressure. Mr. Choi soon appears and explains that if Baek were to go all out, Hunter Mei would be no match for him. But he then introduces Baek's opponent as Med Dongwook from the famed guild. Curious as to why Baek isn't unleashing his full strength against such a capable foe, Mr. Choi reveals that Baek prefers to hold back in front of a crowd. When he fights at full power, he transforms into something monstrous. Jinwoo can't help but think that the rumors about Baek being a transformation-type hunter might actually be true, and just then, hunters from Japan arrive on the scene. Their guildmaster Goto then spots Jinwoo in the stands and inquires about his identity. Hanako quickly identifies him as Jinwoo, a recently promoted S-rank hunter. Initially, Goto was under the impression that Jinwoo might be a skilled assassin, but Hanako clarifies that he is in fact a mage. Meanwhile, Chahae and Lim notice Jinwoo's presence, while Baek and Mei continue their heated bout. Watching the ongoing fights, Hanako grows increasingly disappointed with the level of strength displayed by the local hunters, remarking that they don't even resemble true S-rank fighters, perhaps a consequence of her constant exposure to Goto's battles. Not long after, Mr. Park Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, overhears their comments. Although he struggles to understand the Japanese banter, he catches enough to feel insulted by their disparaging remarks. Hanako casually mentions she's never even heard of Mr. Park, to which they suggest that might be because he's only an A-rank hunter rather than an S-rank. Still, they remind everyone that his guild remains among the top 5. Chahae and Lim step in to prevent further squabbling, and Mr. Park is unwilling to let their comments go unchallenged. Seizing the moment, Goto proposes a friendly sparring match to test the prowess of Korean hunters, insisting that only S-rank fighters should participate, with the rules to be decided collectively. Gunny approves of the idea and emphasizes that mages should sit this one out, as their strength is notoriously difficult to gauge in combat. He also insists that only combat-oriented hunters join, dismissing the less battle-hardened ones. Baek then lays out the rules. Any participant who gets grabbed at the wrist, touched on the back, or forced to the ground will be deemed defeated. And rather than a one-on-one duel, the match is designed as a battle royale to mirror the chaos expected on the island. With the terms set, Goto nods in agreement, and the event is set to proceed. It is soon revealed that from the Korean side, the competitors will be Chahae, Lim, Ma, and Baek, while from Japan, the fighters are Tawada, Kumamoto, Hoshino, and Tanaka. Then we see Jinwoo watching the rivals assembled in the ring, noting with interest that Goto isn't fighting at all. This unexpected situation gives him the chance to witness an all-out clash between S-rank hunters. Mei immediately leaps into action using an ability that enlarges him threefold, as if signaling that the real competition has just begun. As the battle erupts, Baek pursues an opponent attempting to flank his allies, while Mei matches his colossal brute strength against Tanaka in a series of incredibly intense, bone-crushing punches. Meanwhile, Lim faces an opponent whose speed is almost supernatural, and this foe keeps a safe distance until at one point he lands a kick to Lim's temple. Once Lim finds an opening, he fires his projectiles at the enemy. His attack nearly hits Tanaka, prompting Tanaka to shout for Hoshino to knock Lim down before the situation escalates further. From the sidelines, Mr. Choi watches the fight with a mix of concern and curiosity. He asks Gunhee whether the arena is reinforced with high-quality magic gems. Gunhee confirms that it is, though he adds that the current standards might need an upgrade, as these fighters are literally breaking everything. As Bak chases his rival, he reflects bitterly that these hunters are truly the cream of the crop among the Japanese S ranks. If the association ever hopes to win, it will take some heavy lifting. Adopting his monstrous form, Bake attacks fiercely, yet his opponent always manages to slip away. In a moment of frustration, Bake concludes that Kumamoto, in particular, is not built for direct combat. Kumamoto, aware that he narrowly escaped, silently admits that this kind of brawl isn't his forte. Bake glances over at Goto and imagines that the purpose here is to test his subordinate's readiness for the upcoming battle against the ants. Seizing this moment, Bake transforms into an even more advanced form, feeling honored to provide the answer Goto seeks. As Kumamoto struggles and attempts to flee from Bake's relentless pursuit, Bake's speed proves too overwhelming, although his claws never quite manage to land a decisive blow. From the audience, Mr. Park scrutinizes the intensity of the skirmish, concluding that as an A-rank hunter, he stands no chance in such a high-level ring, even though his sycophantic subordinate insists otherwise. Amid the chaos, Tanaka has already finished off Ma, and while Hoshino subdues Lim and ends their duel, Bake clearly dominates his own fight. Yet, Kumamoto persistently dodges every attempt by Bake to strike him. Finally, the two victors from the duels step forward to support their struggling comrade, positioning themselves in front of Bake in a show of solidarity. Meanwhile, Cheke keeps her opponent under control with a flurry of rapid attacks. After landing a solid hit on the Japanese woman Tawada, she realizes she must dash off to aid Bake. But as she sprints away, Kumamoto suddenly appears behind her. With astonishing reflexes, Chaha reacts immediately, drawing blood from Kumamoto, whose eyes flare up an intense, monstrous red. Outside the ring, Kumamoto's acquaintances murmur that no one knows what might happen when he reaches this stage. Hanako suggests that perhaps they should pull Kumamoto out of the ring for his own safety, but Goto objects, fearing it would upset some of the other hunters. So Kumamoto remains in the fight and launches an all-out assault on Chaha with a ferocity no one could have anticipated. With a devastating punch, Kumamoto shatters the ground beneath them, using the rising smoke as cover to catch Chaha off guard. Just then, Jinwoo intervenes to break up the dangerous skirmish, making it clear that the friendly duel has long since escalated beyond its original bounds. Not satisfied with merely disrupting the fight, Kumamoto continues his enraged assault and targets Jinwoo next. Jinwoo, however, effortlessly knocks him down and restrains him. Impressed by the young fighter's capabilities, Goto decides he must personally verify whether Jinwoo is truly just a mage. With Kumamoto under control, Jinwoo turns to Chaha and asks if she sees any problem with admitting defeat, especially since Bak has already conceded. Calmly, Chaha acknowledges her loss. Meanwhile, Bake reflects sadly that even if he had given his all, he wouldn't have been able to overcome the two. Shortly thereafter, Hanako approaches Jinwoo and informs him that her master Goto wishes to duel with him. Observing Goto's unmistakable fighting spirit, Jinwoo recognizes this as an excellent opportunity to test the power he acquired in the Demon Castle. At the same time, Goto grows irritated when he realizes that Jinwoo even smiles at the prospect of challenging him. Hanako then confirms that Jinwoo has accepted the duel, but with one condition: Goto must fight without holding back. In another part of the world, a TV news report announces that the fourth raid on Jeju Island is fast approaching. Noticing that Juhi is watching the report, a woman asks if she's planning to work, but Juhi replies that she's off today. Nonetheless, the woman insists that the hunters must remain focused on the raid and not become idle. After this brief exchange, Juhi steps out onto the balcony to make a call regarding the defense forces for the Jeju Island expedition. Back in the training room, Lim asks with a mix of curiosity and concern about what's going to happen now, and casually replies that Jinwoo is about to face Goto in a duel. Chaha reflects quietly that she has seen Jinwoo fight in an A-rank dungeon before, but she isn't entirely sure if he's truly ready for a challenge of this magnitude. Bak then inquires whether Chaha isn't bothered by being surrounded by so many hunters, to which she coolly responds that on the battlefield, one can't afford to hold her nose all the time. In fact, it might be better to stop those overly confident fighters too. Bak agrees, admitting that while he would typically favor a duel between a fighter and a caster, now he finds himself sharing the same sentiments as his partner. After all, if Jinwoo is indeed an awakened mage capable of growing stronger, no one really knows what might happen. With that, Jinwoo announces that he's ready to fight. No sooner does he speak than Goto immediately lands a punch aimed at Jinwoo's face, though Jinwoo dodges it just in time, sarcastically remarking that he couldn't even finish his sentence. Sensing the formidable aura radiating from Jinwoo, Goto begins to doubt that he's merely a mage. Either way, it's time to discover Jinwoo's true nature. With renewed determination, Goto launches an all-out attack, moving with incredible speed. Jinwoo acknowledges that his opponent is indeed a cut above the rest of the S ranks, but he simply isn't fast enough to land a hit. Infuriated by the smug smile on his rival's face, Goto intensifies his assault. From the sidelines, Lim admits somewhat helplessly that he can't see a thing, while Meg points out that Jinwoo must be exceptionally tough to be able to dodge those powerful punches. Meanwhile, Chahe observes that Jinwoo isn't just evading attacks, he's also carefully testing his opponent's strength. After a flurry of blows, Goto notices that his rival is starting to put some distance between them and dislikes how effortlessly Jinwoo seems to be handling the fight. Determined to change tactics, Goto conjures a skill that envelops his fist in roaring fire. With an even greater burst of speed, he slashes at Jinwoo's face, followed by a crushing strike that makes Chahe fear for Jinwoo's life. However, when the dust finally settles, Jinwoo not only blocks the attempt, but also taunts his opponent, remarking that those pointed fingers could easily poke someone's eyes out. Moreover, Goto makes it clear that if Jinwoo had grabbed his wrist instead of his hand, it would have been game over for Goto. Yet neither fighter seems willing to end the match too quickly. With that, the two separate and retreat to accumulate an enormous, almost grotesque amount of mana for their next exchange. Their subordinates suddenly realize that the master is truly in the thick of the fight. Baek's eyes widen with worry because he fears that someone might not make it out alive, while Goto and Jinwoo seem entirely fixated on their duel. Riding the crest of powerful waves of mana, the two charge into a direct confrontation. At the same time, Baek and Chahat intervene by grabbing Jinwoo, and the Japanese side holds back their leader, convinced that the battle would otherwise spiral wildly out of control. Finally, Baek orders Hanako to instruct the master to call a halt to the fight. Once the confrontation ends, Mei can't help but joke that the young fighter faced the mighty Goto and ended up with nothing more than a scratch. Jinwoo reflects that although he took a significant risk, he now has a keen understanding of everyone's strengths, and he even managed to infiltrate soldiers into the shadows of 5 of them. As the Japanese guild prepares to depart, Gunny warns Goto that he'll be sending information about all the hunters involved in the upcoming raid. Later, when they're alone, Gunny sees Jinwoo approaching and Jinwoo casually asks him about the Jeju Island mission. At the same time, Goto calls a man named Ryuji and tells him about a very powerful hunter in the area whose name is Jinwoo, who has recently undergone a reawakening and been elevated to S rank. Ryuji finds it odd that this formidable hunter's name isn't on the raid list, a fact that also surprises Goto. Similarly, Chaha remarks to Mr. Choi that Jinwoo isn't joining them on the mission. Mr. Choi believes Jinwoo has his reasons, and he insists that something must be said about it. At that moment, Baek notices that even Byung-gu is absent from the mission. In the end, Mr. Choi concludes that with 15 S-rank hunters still at the association's disposal, victory is assured. As night falls, Jinwoo returns home to a warm welcome, where his mother and sister greet him with dinner already prepared. With a relieved smile, he announces his return. During the meal, he reflects on how his mother had awakened after 4 long years in a coma and admits that she needs him. For that reason, he has decided not to join the Jeju Island mission. At the same time, on that same island, the Queen Ant laments that her subjects have begun devouring one another due to a severe shortage of prey, a situation that simply cannot continue. The Queen herself knows that to leave the island, she must have an even stronger offspring capable of leading her kingdom. At that moment, the creature breaks free from its egg and undergoes a dramatic mutation, transforming its body and color to become more human-like with 2 arms and 2 legs. The queen urges her offspring to grow stronger, and in response, the newly emerged creature lets out a disturbing, otherworldly scream that sends a surreal wave of mana rippling through the air. Back in the city the following day, the TV broadcasts alarming news. The flying ants are evolving at an unprecedented rate. Whereas during the 3rd raid on Jeju Island they had remained terrestrial, these new versions now exhibit humanoid traits and sport a pair of wings on their backs. As Byung-gu strolls through the streets, he passes by children imitating S-rank hunters, a vivid reminder of how deeply the phenomenon has captured the public's imagination. Nearby in a bustling coffee shop, Leo is trying to persuade Han Song-ye to stay out of the defense force, arguing that she's still only E rank. Over the din of conversation, the city's sound system blares an announcement that hunters are being urgently recruited to safeguard Korea. At the same time, Jui unexpectedly encounters none other than Song Chil, adding to the day's unfolding intrigue. As dusk approaches, Gunhee eagerly awaits the start of tomorrow's raid on Jeju Island. When dawn finally breaks, fleets of ships begin arriving near the mission site. A member of the Knights Guild turns to the master, asks if they truly have what it takes to confront the ants. Mr. Park replies curtly that their capabilities will only be proven in battle, but assures him that they were dispatched as an emergency measure. Not far away, the famed guild makes its dramatic entrance by helicopter. But Leader Mei bids farewell to the Vice Master as he sets off for war. Nearby, as always, Minson draws countless media clicks with his usual flair, while Lim demands that someone retrieve him immediately to prevent further chaos. Throughout the attack fleets and among the coastal guard, worried expressions can be seen on the faces of the hunters. In a meeting with Association President Gunhee, Jinchul reports that all units are fully prepared. Gunhee is visibly pleased to see so many volunteers ready to defend the country and is relieved when news comes in that a certain individual had reconsidered and decided to join the offensive. At that moment, Baek is startled to see Byung-gu approaching, and the two old friends greet each other warmly. Meanwhile, at the island's center, the elite Japanese group is split into 4 teams, each assuming strategic positions. As the hunters are airlifted to their mission zone, they notice that a team of cameramen has been dispatched by the board to broadcast the battle live. Ma inquires whether the cameraman is safe, and the man reassures him that he's accustomed to filming in hazardous conditions. Ma adds with a touch of weary hope that he wishes this would be the final S-rank raid on the island. After all, if these raids persist, the entire country might vanish. Baek silently agrees and muses that a national hero must emerge from this confrontation. Jinchul then informs Gunhee that the attack team is ready to move out. With that, Gunhee announces the commencement of the 4th raid on Jeju Island. In a parallel development, Goto orders his 4 diversionary forces to operate at full strength, unleashing an astonishing surge of mana that leaves Baek, high above in the helicopter, visibly impressed. Amidst the chaos, swarms of ants begin emerging from a nearby anthill. Mr. Choi strides to the rear exit of the cargo aircraft and with brutal efficiency, blows up the insects. Yet, as an endless stream of ants appears every second, he quickly realizes that he must push himself even harder. Once he finally manages to eradicate the threat, he asks if it's time to land. With the helicopter now grounded, Baek confidently asserts that the Japanese will be able to distract the ants for an hour, enough time for the Koreans to eliminate the Queen. Back in the operations room, Ryuji gives the order to start interference. A powerful signal is transmitted to prevent the ants from receiving the Queen's emergency call. In the heat of battle, Tawada warns that Kumamoto is in grave danger of dying if he remains paralyzed. Shimizu suggests that perhaps it would be better to wipe out all the ants at once, while a colleague shouts, asking where Tanaka is. Moments later, Tanaka is seen in another corner, gleefully smashing insects as if he were a child having fun. Elsewhere on the island, a Japanese man observes the thick smoke rising from Mr. Choi's explosive attack and asks his partner if he thinks he could take on that master in a duel, despite his own ice-based power. After sealing off the entrance to the ant nest, Mr. Choi leads his group forward. However, the labyrinthine network of tunnels proves confusing and Baek questions which direction they should take. To ease their worries, Mr. Choi conjures a fireball to illuminate each passage, so they need to inspect every hole individually. Now the task is simply to find the tunnel that leads to the deepest point, and Mr. Choi is convinced that a particular one is the right choice. Meanwhile, Jinwoo completes his daily exercise quota and in a moment of relaxation, imagines that the S-rank hunters on the expedition will handle the ant problem without much trouble, even though he isn't there himself. As the group follows the promising path selected by Mr. Choi, Lim speculates that the Queen might have fled, but Baek reminds him firmly that escaping from this island isn't an option. At that precise moment, Mr. Choi gathers his comrades to inspect an egg chamber, which leads them to believe that the Queen is nearby. Moments later, they spot a giant egg, and the sight fills the team with dread as a creature does seem to have emerged from it. Elsewhere, we see that Tanaka has injured his shoulder and asks for healing from the group's healer Shimizu, but instead of immediately tending to him, she teases him, demanding something in return. However, before anyone can react further, the Ant King suddenly appears and in a brutal twist rips Shimizu's head off and acts so shocking that it plunges the team into terror. And that shit seems like that damn Hunter x Hunter Ant arc all over again. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.